Hey! I said don't splash me! Rocky's irritated bark was only met with laughter as the mixed breed shook the water off himself. Nearby in the lake, a chocolate lab was giggling uncontrollably. Simple math, Walkie, Zuma laughed. You're funny when you get mad. A day at the lake was a trip anyone needed to take their mind off an afternoon. Taking a break and resting under nature's waters was a great way to relax, not to mention the Paw Patrol had been craving a vacation day for weeks. Usually, they would go to the beach to relax, as Adventure Bay was an island. Today was a special case, however, as a forest had been discovered a small distance from the lookout, and within it a crystal blue lake. Rocky was being his usual self, his hydrophobia confining him to the lake's edge. There was no sand to play in, so Rocky entertained himself looking for bugs. Sky, the blonde cockapoo pup, had also stayed out of the water. Not due to any dislike of swimming, however, simply because she was feeling under the weather and didn't want to exert herself. Zuma and Rubble were vigorously enjoying themselves in the water, and while Rubble, a bulldog, was a relatively slow swimmer, he was greatly entertained by water guns. Chase, the German Shepherd of the team, was lying near the edge, half submerged in the water. It almost looked like he was sleeping, but every few moments he'd open his eyes when Marshall called him to watch a new trick. Marshall, the one Dalmatian, was an energetic pup, albeit clumsy at times. It was a well-rounded team of 6, each dog bearing a special skill to assist Adventure Bay in its emergency needs. Today, however, they were on a well-deserved vacation. Zuma, I swear! Rocky barked again. Huh? Who? Zuma said, looking around unknowingly. I think that was the wind. Chase could be heard snickering under his breath. Zuma, cut it out, honestly, called Ryder. Stop splashing him, you know he hates that. Ryder was the glue that held the team together. The boy led the dogs on their missions and was responsible for bringing them together. Without him, the team lacked any direction and would surely fall apart. Sorry, Zuma chuckled sheepishly. I'll splash Chase instead. The German Shepherd's eyes suddenly shot open. Wait, what? Everyone then enjoyed the entertaining display of Chase struggling to swim free of Zuma's waves. No matter what, Zuma's one mastered skill always lay within the water. He was the sea dog of the team and loved every minute of his job, even if he wasn't called any many missions. It was a wonder how Rocky and Zuma got along, as it seemed they'd hate each other to the core. No matter their trifles, the team knew one another and always had each other's backs. Ooh, splash me! Rubble bounced in the water. I don't think that'd be fair, Zuma turned. Zuma was never really able to get his speech impediment taken care of, leaving him slurring his R's, for reasons that included both him being insecure over it and also feeling that there were more important things that needed his attention. Even then, many offered to help him with his speech, only to be met with a polite decline. Aw, why not? I don't think you'd be able to escape me, at all. Yes, Splash Rubble, go for him, Chase pleaded. Big German Shepherd afraid of the water? Marshall smirked. No, I'm afraid of what could be in this lake, disease and stuff. Rocky rolled his eyes. Ironic, considering we go to the beach all the time, and everyone knows that water is far from clean. What do you know about clean, trash boy? Marshall laughed. Chase shot Marshall a look, surprised at his change of tone. It's recycling, the mixed breed shot back. It's one of the cleanest, most efficient ways to clean up the earth. Oh, sure, the Dalmatian grinned. Forget finding the cure of cancer. Let's all recycle! Marshall! Ryder called. Seriously, what is up with you all? Play nice! The bickering eventually died down, leaving Rocky with an irritated look, only for it to instantly die away as he found a millipede under a rock. Marshall swam back over and settled down next to Chase, who was still looking at him oddly. Sky watched the whole ordeal, and if she hadn't been sick, she'd probably jump in to break them up. Where did that come from? Chase asked. What? The trash boy comment. It's not like you to insult pups to their faces. Hey, I only wanted to get in on the fun. Marshall held up his paws defensively. I never really get a word in around here most of the time. Okay, well, Chase shrugged. Can you tone it down next time? Alright, Chase. Every once in a while, Chase appreciated Marshall's obedience when it came to following orders. The Dalmatian didn't stray out of line too often, but it was good enough that he at least listened to leadership, unlike Zuma. Even if the pups had minor disagreements, they rarely fought, and Ryder eventually taught them to apologize, forgive, and forget. That didn't mean some pups would need a little space, however, and even though Rocky wasn't mad at the insult flung in his face, he found himself wandering off. Hey Ryder, he called over his gray shoulder. Can I go explore the trail we came in on? Go ahead, the boy waved. Just be careful and be back soon. The mixed breed happily pushed himself through the shrubbery as the dogs behind him simply shrugged. Rocky always enjoyed a moment alone, and he smiled as he traversed along nature's path. Being only the size of a puppy, the thick foliage felt like an entire jungle, when to Ryder it was merely quote-unquote ground plants. Nonetheless, the mixed breed put his nose to the ground and sniffed for anything interesting. A large number of scents hit him at once, the cool scent of the dirt and the aromas of beautiful flowers in yellow and white. Being a recycle pup, Rocky found a hobby of collecting objects he could tinker with and possibly make into something new. As he walked further down the path, his nose suddenly carried him into the dense foliage on his left, deviating from the path. Rocky was hesitant, but curiosity overcame him, and he pushed his way in. Pushing through the blockades of leaves and twigs, he found himself in a new clearing. Ooh, the mixed breed said aloud, looking around for any twigs or litter. He stopped when he came across what looked like a small radio. Score! He cheered to himself and picked up the small object in his mouth.
Drop it!
Came a cold voice behind him. Startled, Rocky froze and let the radio drop from his mouth. Confused, he tried to turn around.
Don't move,
the voice commanded, and Rocky quickly faced forward. As unease oozed within the pup, he heard the dog start walking over into his view. Flicking his eyes to his left, Rocky saw the speaker, and immediately his fear rose. The dog was almost twice Rocky's size. He was unable to tell the dog's species, as he was dressed head to paw in tactical gear. A gray bodysuit could be seen under his black vest, and pieces of armor dotted his body. Its head was covered by a ski mask, with goggles over the eyes. The only parts of the dog that stuck out were his ears and tail, which were blonde in color. On its back was what seemed a pup pack, only bigger and more slimmed down. Rocky felt slight panic when he saw a nightstick and taser attached to it.
What are you doing here?
The trooper barked, taking a firm stance.
I just...
Rocky muttered, his voice quivering. wanted to look for bugs.
This area is being quarantined by the ACG. No outside personnel is allowed in or out.
Why? The mixed breed asked. Did something happen?
That is none of your business!
The trooper growled, staring Rocky down through his goggles.
Now clear out before I have reason to detain you!
Can I move?
Yes. Go.
With a shaky breath, Rocky backed up and quickly ran away, his eyes beginning to well up. For a moment, he genuinely feared for his safety and sprinted as fast as he could back to Ryder, barely noticing the tears coming down. The trooper watched the pup go with an irritated look, then picked up the radio and clicked it on.
Cyrus, we had a small breach, but it's contained now. Some lost puppy wandered in. They weren't in contact with the biosite, so we should be okay.
Meanwhile, many heads turned as Rocky came streaming back, nearly falling into the lake itself. Ryder caught the terrified pup with open arms and tried to comfort him. Chase and Zuma instantly came out of the water, their eyes filled with concern. Sky picked her head up from her resting spot and hastily walked over, paying no mind to her sickness. Rubble swam to the edge of the lake and watched with surprised eyes. Marshall walked out behind Chase, then stopped as he noticed something tickling his back leg. He turned his head around and lifted his black spotted leg, and noticed something attached to it. It resembled a worm of some kind, pale pink in color. Startled, Marshall quickly kicked off the worm, and it flew back into the water. The Dalmatian gagged, but quickly shook himself off and went to Rocky's aid, reminding himself to take a bath later. The pup soon went home, Ryder carrying Rocky. As they left, Chase turned back to look at the lake, narrowing his eyes. For a brief moment, he swore he saw something moving in the foliage. He sniffed the air for a moment, only for Ryder to call him. With a final look, Chase turned and joined back with the team. The news of a dog in tactical gear, not to mention holding up Rocky, was met with great surprise from the team. While most carried looks of concern as Rocky was donated several pup treats, Chase's mind was turning. A dog in gear like that, the only thing that came to his head was a SWAT team. But what was a SWAT team doing in Adventure Bay? Nothing in the island's history has ever required such a military reaction. He figured as law enforcement, he should know a thing or two about a military presence, or even be tied to it directly. "I've never heard anything like that before," Chase inquired, eyes gazing to the floor. "I'm not making it up," Rocky frowned, reaching down to munch on a treat. "Didn't say you were." The two dogs were talking up in the lookout. Rocky seated comfortably in a green dog bed, a pile of treats at his paws. Chase was sitting a few inches away, lying on his stomach, trying to make sense of all this new information. The other pups, including Ryder, had already had their moment to talk to Rocky, but Chase anxiously sought out more to learn. "Did he have a badge?" "No." The mixed breed shook his head. "I think he said some things, but I don't remember. Sorry." Chase waved off his apology. "It's fine. Get well, buddy." The sound of a door opening made the two dogs turn their heads. Ryder had quickly entered the room and switched on the intercom. "Paw Patrol to the lookout!" he commanded into the mic, calling out his catchphrase. Chase merely got up and walked over, looking up at Ryder. "Is this about the dog?" "No, Chase. New issue. Ryder replied. Although we should get on that. A few moments later, the elevator to the lookout quickly opened, revealing the remaining 6 pups all overturned on their backs. Marshall was giggling nervously, and Zuma could be seen rolling his eyes. Rocky gave a bored expression. Did Marshall... Yes, Marshall crashed into us, Zuma finished. Again. Sorry. The Dalmatian gave a shy smile. It's okay, Rubble chirped. Ryder quickly moved to the front of the room while the pups dressed in their uniforms and got into formation. Chase wasted no time slipping into his police gear and catching his hat on his head. It was a trick he taught himself and earned a killing in treats. Ready for action, Ryder, sir! The shepherd saluted. Thanks for hurrying, pups, Ryder smiled. We have a situation down in Adventure Bay. A woman and her dog have gone missing. Oh no! Rubble drew back, fear in his eyes. Ryder quickly brought Chase's logo on the screen, ready to give the pup his directions. Chase, I'll need you to direct traffic with your cones and investigate the scene. Try and figure out what's happened. Chase is on the case! Rocky, the boy continued, you'll be helping Chase look for clues since you have a knack for finding little things of value. Green means go! Rocky held up his paw in a salute. Great! Paw Patrol is on a... Wait! Sky jumped up. What can I do? Everyone turned their heads, a mix of confusion and awe in their eyes. It was almost unheard of to interrupt a mission briefing. Sky? Ryder raised an eyebrow at the cockapoo. Well... She traced her paw along the ground. Usually I'm involved in these kinds of things. Can I have air support or... Aren't you sick? Just a little, the pup insisted. It hasn't really gotten worse. Hasn't gotten worse, yet hasn't gotten better? Chase tilted his head. Alright, fine, Ryder surrendered. But you can only provide watch from the skies. No crazy exertion that could make you worse. The small dog nodded, satisfied with her role. This pup's gonna fly! Her voice was noticeably weaker. Chase, Rocky, and Sky all jumped to action, leaping onto the slide as their rigs below configured into their vehicle modes. Chase landed in his police cruiser and revved the engine, happy for some action to take his mind off of recent events. Rocky jumped into his garbage collector, smiling the whole way down. With a triumphant howl, the mixed breed took the controls and took to the street. Sky was last, jumping into her helicopter and lifting into the air in no time. With Ryder leading the way on his ATV, they sped away from the tower into the action they were so well accustomed to. As the wind blew through Rocky's fur and ears, he couldn't help but laugh a little. Chase wondered deep down if the mixed breed had a secret love for drag racing. Sky quickly veered off, taking her helicopter to higher skies. As much as she wanted to join the team for real, she remained obedient to Ryder's orders and piloted to a position that would give her a great view of the bay. All she had to do was relay anything she saw, even if it was a little boring. The pups down below quickly sped through town, people and pups alike stopping to wave at them. Chase paid them no mind, as there was a job to do. They eventually stopped in front of a mid-class house, coming to a stop. It was a nice and humble stead for someone with not too much money yet enough to live on. The yard was well kept, with a brown picket fence bordering around it, not much leading up to the house other than a stone path. The house itself was average-sized, blue in color with a black roof. The door was a lovely shade of red, looking rather inviting to someone bringing over a plate of cookies or pup treats. A lonely mailbox stood in front of the property. Chase instantly jumped out and grabbed his traffic cones with his teeth, beginning to dot them out to direct incoming cars from the scene. Rocky hopped out of his own vehicle and walked out up the path, coming toward the door. There was a doggy door installed below, reminding Rocky that the owner had a dog. Leaning forward to sniff the door, he caught a whiff of vanilla. An odd smell, yet pleasing to the nose. The mixed breed shrugged and pushed himself through the door.
"Hey guys,"
Sky spoke from the radio, catching the attention of Ryder and Chase. "Sky?" Ryder responded. "Did you find the missing persons?"
"Well, no.
She said apologetically.
But there's something else down there I can see."
"Sky, don't report anything unless it's relevant to the mission," he replied in annoyance.
"No, Ryder. I can see like 6 pup vehicles all speeding down the streets."
"Pup vehicles?" Ryder blinked in confusion. "Like our rigs?"
"Yeah, but a lot less colorful. They're coming your way."
"I'll check it out." Ryder sprang up and jumped back on his ATV. Chase quickly turned and followed him. "But sir, the mission!" "Take it from here, Chase. I know you can." The boy turned from his ride. "I don't know any other dogs that have rigs like ours. I'll be back soon." With a final look at Chase, Ryder sped off back into the street, hunting for the mysterious rigs. Chase suddenly felt much smaller than usual, even though it was a feeling he should have been having often, being a puppy and all. With a deep breath, he turned back to the house and started sniffing up the path. Meanwhile, Rocky was hard at work inside the house. With cheerful humming, he had summoned the metal claw from his pup pack, expertly using it to clean up the rooms. A lot of trash was sprinkled around, a soda can here and there, some chip bags, and a whole pizza box. Cleaning was his specialty, and there was something almost therapeutic about turning a room from filthy to spotless. He let out a grunt of annoyance when he discovered a whole room with several spots of mud. "Doesn't anyone wipe their feet anymore?" he inquired, but shrugged and went to get a sponge from his rig. Chase was outside, slightly distracted as a beetle crossed his view. His eyes suddenly shot up as he heard the screeching sound of multiple cars. His head picked up an alarm, eyes staring out into the street as a large number of pup vehicles all drove up at once, smothering his traffic cones. "Hey, you can't," he started to say.
Get on the ground!
A voice barked out as dogs flooded out of the rigs. Chase drew back in alarm when he realized all the dogs were wearing dark tactical gear, almost exactly like Rocky described. But this wasn't one dog, it was a dozen, and now they were all here. The shepherd was at a loss for words when the armored animals strapped on pup packs of their own, each one sporting a full metal and incredibly real assault rifle. "What?" Chase tried to say.
I said on the ground! Now!
The trooper shouted through its mask, jumping over the fence in front of him. A yellow taser quickly extended out of his pack. The inner puppy within Chase seemed to come out as he quickly threw himself to the ground. His voice was gone, replaced with whimpers as his courage left him. Quivering, his ears went flat, and his mind swirled with fear as he lay staring ahead at the tufts of grass.
Paws behind your head!
Came the new order, and he obeyed. He flinched as he felt his paws get zip-tied together. Around him, he could hear multiple troopers all streaming around the property. His pup pack was quickly torn off and tossed aside, and he felt his collar get clipped off and thrown into the grass. The loss of his tag cut off all communication with Sky and Ryder.
Quarantine the area! Nothing gets out until cleared!
Shouted someone.
There are 2 vehicles out here.
The trooper continued, noticing Rocky's garbage collector.
Where's the other dog?
"He's inside!" Chase cried.
Inside?
The tactical dog recoiled.
He could be contaminating the whole site! What's going on?
A new voice came, one sounding more authoritative.
The second dog is inside, within the biozone, sir! What?
The dog also recoiled, then turned to the rest of the dogs.
Break down the door and get him out!
Rocky could hear the commotion from the inside. He was just about to hit the front door to walk outside, needing his sponge to banish the muddy mess that plagued the room. When the sound of cars screeching in, complete with shouting, Rocky stopped and peeked out the window. The sight of the exact dogs who scared him yesterday filled him with more fear than water ever could. Seeing Chase not only arrested, but being painfully driven to the ground as a trooper was standing on his head, filled him with confusion and panic. He turned and ran, turning into the room and frantically searching with quickened breath for a place to hide. His heart skipped when the sound of shattering wood and glass rang out through the house.
Hallway clear!
Came a voice. Rocky felt frozen to the floor, his mind spinning as it tried to think of any possible way out. Could he run from them? Could he hide from them? Should he give himself up? What were they going to do to him? What would they do to him if he ran? The trooper instantly rounded the corner, catching sight of the mixed breed, and instantly drew back, aiming down the rifle.
On the ground, paws above your head!
What did I do? Rocky quivered, voice nearly breaking with fear.
Pup, you better get on the fucking ground right now!
The trooper's gun made a clicking noise, meaning it had just been cocked and ready to fire. Life flashed before his eyes. Rocky threw himself to the ground as tears fell from his eyes. He felt his pup pack get torn off his body, and his paws were zip-tied. Chase cried in protest as the dogs grabbed his tied paws, catching them with a small hook from their packs. He was dragged out of the yard and into a large van-like vehicle, dark green in color. As he looked back, Chase could see another dog watching him, a dog different from the troopers. It was a Belgian Malinois, brown and black in color, dressed in darker gear. The hardy dog narrowed his amber eyes at Chase, holding the gaze until the doors were shut. Locked in the back of the military van, Chase was dragged into a small holding kennel. The next few minutes were not something he'd ever want to live again. His uniform was stripped away, then sprayed with multiple kinds of mist. He either sneezed, coughed, or shook his head as he was bludgeoned with tests. At that moment, Chase wished he could melt into the floor. He had never felt so powerless in his entire life. Every moment he could, he backed up into the corner of the kennel, making every attempt possible to shield himself.
We got the readings back on his uniform.
A trooper noted through his mask, tall brown ears coming through his helmet.
No cross-contamination. Well, that's one good thing,
muttered another, a shorter trooper with black flopping ears.
Initiate bioscan.
Chase had 100 questions, but fear had sealed his muzzle. His tail was curled underneath him, like letting it out for even a moment would get it chomped off. A beeping noise suddenly came from above, and Chase looked upward to see a small device on the top of the kennel. A fine grid-shaped laser was suddenly emitted, passing through Chase forward and backward. The puppy's breathing had not yet slowed, and every new instrument activated made him feel even closer to wetting the floor. The two troopers read some data on the tablet, then quickly collected their things and jumped out of the van, leaving Chase alone. He stayed cowering in the corner, waiting several minutes before finally lifting his ears again. With one paw in front of the other, the puppy crept to the iron gate of the cage and peeked out, careful to make little to no noise. The walls of the van were lined with dark metal plating, each with shelves and racks for various things. A footlocker compartment was in view just across from him, locked tightly with various bolts. The shelves carried spare helmets, a worn set of gloves, and discarded equipment Chase couldn't place the meaning of. His eyes soon fell to his blue pup pack, thrown to the side of the van. His mind raced as options and ideas shot in and out. All of the gadgets on the pack were bark activated. All he had to do was say the equipment name and finish with a bark. Could he break himself out? Was that an option? His question was answered as he caught sight of a gun rack just 2 feet from his pup pack. 4 idle assault rifles rested on its hinges, seemingly venting themselves from shedding blood and deafening violence. Chase gulped and decided he'd stay put for now. The door of the van suddenly opened again, causing Chase to scamper back to his safety corner. He could hear a dog march in, placing one foot after another and lifting its powerful body into the vehicle. The doors were shut behind it, and the puppy's heart skipped a beat as the dog casually walked to the steel bars and looked through. Their eyes were cold and stone, with the hard face riddled with scars. They were brown and black in color, and seemed to be another German Shepherd. "Chase, right?" the dog asked. "Paw Patrol Division?" Yes, sir," the puppy breathed as if fear was blocking his voice itself. "You passed the scan, and so did your friend. Is that a good thing?" Chase gently picked his head up. "It's the only good thing," the dog growled. "Good because it means I don't have to kill a puppy today." Chase retracted his head and slunk back farther. "My name is Cyrus," the dog said. "Captain Cyrus. Now tell me what you two were doing here, now." Chase took a second to gather his bearings, tapping a foot on the ground. He had been brave before in the face of danger, but this was something else. Cyrus was a whole new level of intimidation. His very presence suppressed any action Chase could have taken to stand up for himself. "We were answering a call about a missing woman," he explained. "And her dog." "And?" Cyrus pushed. "I don't know!" Chase defended. "I just stayed outside. Rocky went in." "I've already talked to your mutt friend." Cyrus leaned back, unimpressed. "He nearly ruined the entire crime scene by cleaning it up. Do you know how many DNA traces and evidence he could have done away with? What have we done wrong?" "You want the whole story?" Cyrus asked, but kept talking. "You are impeding on ACG turf, which is adult speak for getting in the way." "ACG?" Chase asked. "I've never heard of you before." "Of course you haven't. We aren't stationed in this bay, and never have been. But recent events have called us to your location, and you need to stay out of our business." "But we were called to help," Chase protested. "Sure you were." Cyrus rolled his eyes. "These people are so used to a kid and his puppies solving all their problems. But this problem takes more, and the professionals need to take charge now." "But we're the Paw Patrol." "And we are the Assault and Containment Guild," the dog said, a hint of pride in his voice. "We'll let you go, but there can be no more interference, or we'll really put you down." Chase looked down sadly. "Yes, sir." With Chase's nobility up front, Cyrus could feel himself softening a little. He knew this puppy wasn't an innocent animal who wandered into traffic. As much of a joke as it was Adventure Bay did have law enforcement. Dogs didn't get a title like that from a prize in a treat box. Listen, kid, Cyrus sighed. I know you mean well, but you need to move aside for a bit. Once we find what we're looking for, we'll clear out. What are you looking for? Chase asked, tilting his head. Classified information. Sorry. Not wanting to ask any more stupid questions, Chase tried to ease the tension by asking something friendlier. Are you a German Shepherd like me? The puppy's tail gave off the faintest sign of wagging. The larger dog chuckled. No, I'm a Belgian Malinois. We're a lot stronger than shepherds, believe it or not, and more suited for police work. You are? Chase could feel his heart sinking. Yeah, I thought you were one too, Cyrus shrugged. I guess two breeds look alike. Chase lowered his head for a moment, shuffling his paws. Being so exposed and caged, anxiety was starting to build within him, a feeling he tried to shake by presenting himself as not afraid. His attempts had, however, failed, and Cyrus's presence, combined with him being a much stronger and better breed, was making him feel sick. You said you were letting me go? The Malinois' smile quickly died. In time. Your friend is still in interrogation. Interrogation? Chase repeated with widened eyes, fearing for Rocky. As I said, he messed up the entire crime scene. Chase did not realize that just a couple of feet away, there was another van parked on the side of the road. Rocky, zip-tied and stripped of his pack and uniform, was dragged in and locked in a kennel just like Chase. Even though he had already passed the scans and tests, the troopers had more that needed to be done with him. The walls of the van were thick enough to suppress the pain cry of a dog meeting the edge of a baton.
Evidence tampering mutt!
The trooper barked through his mask, swatting Rocky into the wall of the kennel.
What are you hiding?
Rocky could barely stand as sharp pain tore through his head, spending what little energy he had to cover his face. The mixed breed could only get so many words out as his quivering studied his voice, and blood spilled from his nose. After he passed the test, one of the ACG troopers decided to open the kennel and start a rather physical interrogation. I'm sorry! Rocky cried out.
You have no idea the setback you just caused.
The trooper clamped his paw on Rocky's arm and shoved it away, staring down through his tactical goggles.
No one does that out of blind idiocy. Now talk!
I just wanted to clean. I like cleaning. The mixed breed whimpered, trying to defend any part of himself.
Bullshit! Who likes cleaning? Rix, I don't think you're being convincing enough.
Called the other trooper, chuckling darkly.
Probably not,
snarled the interrogator, then turned back to Rocky as a metal baton emerged from his pup pack.
Let's see how many of your teeth I can knock out.
He was interrupted as Cyrus opened the doors of the van. Rix, Marley, that's enough! The two troopers immediately stood tall and saluted.
Captain Cyrus, sir! He's not talking, sir!
Well, maybe it's because you're beating the hell out of him, he growled. Now get out. I'll take it from here.
Yes, sir!
The two dogs quickly left and jumped out of the van. Cyrus watched them go, giving a sigh of annoyance. He knew full well of the brutality enforced by the ACG troopers. Every higher up he sent a report to always ignored it. He eventually realized the cruelty of the soldiers was being pardoned, in favor of their efficiency and success in missions. It was something everyone just had to deal with. The Malinois approached Rocky, who was fearfully cowering in the corner of his kennel. The poor dog was bloodied and beaten rather harshly. "Were you really just cleaning?" Rocky nodded wordlessly. "No ill intention?" The puppy shook his head as his broken voice came through. "None." "Alright, just hold out for now," Cyrus tried to reassure him. "You'll be let go once we make our final reports." Chase and Rocky were finally let go after another half hour. They were left standing on the street. The ACG troopers took the extra care to mindlessly toss out their things, along with their collars and uniforms. Chase was aghast at Rocky's condition, and he could feel his heart breaking as the mixed breed stifled his cries. The shepherd waited until the last car disappeared around the corner before reaching for his collar. His tag was blinking, meaning someone was trying to call. Sighing, Chase tapped the tag to let it through.
Chase?
Sky could be heard. "It's us, Sky," he breathed. "Where is Ryder?"
Chase? Oh, thank.
She stopped herself.
Ryder got apprehended a few blocks away. I got scared when I lost connection. Are you okay?
"I'm fine, but Rocky isn't." Chase winced, looking back at his brother in arms. "We're coming home. Tell Marshall to get his EMT gear ready." Rocky was placed into Marshall's EMT care for his wounds. There were no severe injuries, but he was riddled with bruises and minor cuts that stung like salt water on a paper cut. Medically, he was fine, but the scars would haunt him forever. Ryder decided on the spot that Rocky could maybe sit out the next few missions, maybe even take a vacation for a month or two. Sky had given the best report she possibly could, and soon retired to her kennel. As night fell, the rest of the pups made their way to their own havens, wanting to rid of the frightful day. Now it was about 2 in the morning, and the cool night had blanketed Adventure Bay. There was one dog, however, who couldn't sleep, and laid awake with questions and confusion. Chase repeatedly paced around his room, head low to the ground as he struggled to make sense of recent events. He felt responsible for Rocky's trauma. As leader of the team, he should have had some sort of say in the ACG's actions. But none of those tactical dogs even took him seriously, let alone Rocky. Who were they? How long would they be here? Chase stopped walking and picked his head up, staring ahead at his wall. Captain Cyrus had mentioned they were not from Adventure Bay, but foreigners from elsewhere coming in. At that moment, he had an idea. He turned around and went to one of his storage compartments. Pushing aside pup treat wrappers and an empty bowl, he opened the compartment up to reveal piles of old tech. Most of it consisted of dusty wires and outdated electric equipment that didn't do the job anymore. But there was something underneath it that may just see one more purpose. After gripping the forgotten wires in his teeth and tossing them out, an old pup pad was finally revealed. The pup pad currently held by Ryder had many before it. As technology advanced, the handheld would receive updates, or a whole new model itself would be mailed in. Regardless, each replaced pup pad was tossed away into the garbage, although this particular one Chase preferred to keep in storage. He flicked the switch, and the screen flicked to life, bathing Chase and his kennel's soft light. Many of the apps on the pad were gone, lost after the system transfer, but there was one thing that always remained intact: calling. All of the contacts were wiped, but you could still contact other locations across the land by entering an exact code, usually a 12-digit number. Chase took a deep breath and selected the feature, and was met with the blank white screen where contacts would usually list off. Ignoring the vast emptiness of a disconnected pup pad, Chase moved his paw and selected LIN call. The abbreviation LIN stood for Lookout Identification Number. The puppy took his time inputting each number, as using the touchscreen with paws was rather difficult. Every now and then, crickets would sound out in the night, making his ears flick up. When the full ID was typed, Chase activated the call. The pup pad instantly began buzzing away, reawakening its old workings to carry out its new command. His heart began to dip slightly as Chase took a quick peek out of his kennel. As usual, all the other pups were sound asleep. Suddenly, a green light flicked on the pad, and the screen buzzed to life with a confused husky staring through it.
Who is this?
The dog spoke.
Your number is decommissioned. Why are you calling me?
Everest, it's me, Chase reassured, then waved his paw in front of the screen.
Chase? I can't see you.
Everest tilted her head.
Your screen is just black.
The shepherd raised an eyebrow in confusion, then realized the pad's screen was probably in severe disrepair. I think my camera is broken.
Why are you calling me on a discontinued pup pad?
Because I need your help, Chase explained. I need information, and I don't need anyone tracing this call.
Why would someone trace our call?
Everest's ears went back. Have you ever heard of the ACG? Chase asked, dodging the question.
The who?
The Assault and... Chase struggled to recall the full name. Control... something... I don't remember. But these military dogs are showing up all over Adventure Bay, and we don't know why. They hurt Rocky and shut down one of our missions.
What?
The husky went wide-eyed.
Is he okay?
He's fine, Chase waved off. But I know about the communication sites for rent on your mountain outpost. I know that tons of teams pass through your mountain to set up their radio towers. Everest blinked.
How can you possibly know about that? That's classified information.
The shepherd looked to the side in response. I may have bypassed a few of Ryder's locked files.
What?
The husky jolted in alarm.
Chase, you went behind his back?
Hey, I'm the leader of this team, he retaliated. It's my job to be in the know.
You should not have done that.
Everest worried.
If Ryder finds out...
He won't. Now, are you going to help me or not? Everest flattened her ears for a moment, then sighed.
Fine. What do you want?
Surely the ACG secured a tower up there, Chase pressed. If they're not from the city, they must have come long distance. A comm site, a radio tower, satellite. Was anything passed through there belonging to them?
Chase, I can't just dip my paw into classified files.
She countered.
Unlike you, I keep in line.
Damn it, Everest! Chase snapped. Those dogs hurt Rocky! He's probably traumatized! As law enforcement, I need to know what I can do to stop more pups from getting hurt!
Fine!
Everest barked at the screen.
Just calm down, sheesh!
Chase watched Everest suddenly walk off camera, and the tapping of keys and buttons could be heard. The shepherd tapped his paw impatiently, counting the seconds being wasted. Why was she being so difficult? As law enforcement, he felt entirely responsible for the well-being of not just his own team, but the entirety of Adventure Bay.
Okay, here.
Everest hopped back in front of the camera, holding a printed piece of paper in her mouth. What's that? Chase asked, eyeing the paper.
An agreement of construction,
she explained, dropping the sheet in front of her.
Everyone who builds on our site has to pay and sign one.
Chase leaned back and narrowed his eyes, seeking more information.
The Assault and Containment Guild,
Everest read.
They passed through a few days ago and set up a radio tower and some communication lines. Paid a couple $100,000, and the agreement was signed by a dog named Bella.
Bella? Chase repeated. Everest shrugged.
I don't know if she was an officer, a supervisor, or a regular dog, but she left a contact number.
What is it? The shepherd leaned forward.
Chase, I don't know.
Everest, tell me, he growled. After a short pause, the husky sighed.
All right, get a pen and paper. I'll read it off.
The sun was shining brightly as the moon was banished away to the other side of the planet to make way for its lovely day. After Chase's tense conversation with Everest, he collected a contact number that would prove to be very useful. He didn't know if Everest was going to get in trouble or not for disclosing such information, but there were more important things in play right now. Chase was casually walking down the sidewalk of Adventure Bay, passing through town. Any dog loved a good walk, and he was always happy for a good lap or two around the perimeter of the city. But today, Chase had a mission. Completely without uniform, donning only his collar and tag, he strolled his way to a pup cafe only a block away. Chase had taken the number and created a new contact on the pup pad using only the contact number. No name and no photo. He sent a message to the number asking to meet up. He made haste to introduce himself as the quote-unquote law enforcement command of Adventure Bay, and wrote that denying the meetup could have legal consequences, trying to pull every card possible to land himself a talk with this Bella. Brimming with confidence, Chase rounded the corner to the cafe, now walking toward many outside tables. He wasn't going directly into the building, as he wanted to seem friendly, yet stern, and wanted not to scare whoever was coming his way. Chase climbed into the pup seat, sitting down as he looked down at his table. His eyes briefly studied the napkin dispenser before quickly looking up and around. No one in sight. A gray pit bull in a blue bow tie pushed through the doggy door, walking over to Chase's table. "Hi, Chase," he said warmly with a notepad in his mouth. "Can I start you with a drink?" "No thanks, I'm waiting for my second." Chase gave his puppy smile. "All right, flag me down if you need anything." The dog turned and left, leaving Chase alone yet again. Unease was rising in his stomach, a feeling he was unable to ward off. He didn't want his nervousness to show, as in his mind, a good police officer never breaks. Trying to slow his discomfort, he lowered his head and licked his paw to clean it of any dirt. His heartbeat seemed to calm down, although a voice deep within him told him he was going too far. After a few minutes passed, and Chase had successfully cleaned his leg, he wondered if there was enough time to back off. A cream-white paw was suddenly placed on the table, catching Chase by surprise. Looking forward with sharpened ears, Chase saw before him a bright Labrador retriever with brown eyes, somewhat reminding him of Zuma. She instantly looked Chase up and down. She was no puppy by any means, and significantly larger in size. "Bella?" Chase asked. "Who's that?" The lab tilted her head. Chase shook his head. I'm meeting a Bella here. Sorry." He waved off the dog with his paw, expecting her to leave. "You know it's dangerous to meet dogs you don't know," she said flatly. "I'm a police officer. I know what I'm doing." "But do you really? Do you really know what you're doing?" He tilted his head. "Well, No, you don't," she pressed, coldness rising in her voice. "I can see that you really don't understand anything that's going on, and for your sake, it should be kept that way." She leaned further over the table, staring down at Chase with a hardened gaze. "And for the record, the ACG isn't stupid. We tend to get notified when a puppy sticks his nose where he doesn't belong." Chase suddenly felt a lot smaller than usual. "What? We have orders, puppy, she growled. We have a routine, a protocol, and our presence is necessary here in Adventure Bay. We have things we need to take care of here, and you'll find it's a lot healthier for you to stay out of our way. But we're the Paw Patrol, he protested. What you're doing is our job. Tell me, Chase, do you know what a biohazard is? What about terrorism, riot control, a strike team? Have you ever held a gun? Chase found himself unable to speak. No, you don't, she finished. Your job is solving petty conflicts from incompetent people who do things themselves. Our purpose is much more complex, more professional, and more adult. And you will stay out of our way, or we'll come at you with a lot more than a stern conversation. The retriever gave Chase a warm smile and got up from the table. And for the record, your little patrol is a joke. Chase watched her walk off, his ears flattened against his head. His tail had retreated underneath him, and in that moment he wondered if Everest was okay. No doubt those dogs would go hunting for who leaked the number, and Chase felt immediate concern for a husky he may have thrown under the bus. He quickly got up when his tag started ringing, and Marshall's voice came through.
Chase?
The Dalmatian spoke through it, panic in his voice.
Are you there?
What is it? Chase asked, narrowing his eyes.
Come to the city park as fast as you can!
Marshall cried.
Seriously, you need to hurry! It's those dogs again!
So I went to this fast food place, Zuma stated, and they had 2 openings to throw the trash into. One for garbage and the other for recycling. Hours earlier, a massive tragedy had occurred. Rubble's agonizing scream could be heard all across the lookout, and it became known just what happened as everyone picked up their heads in surprise. They were out of pup treats. Now, Zuma, Rocky, and Marshall were on the most important mission of all, going to the store. The 3 dogs were casually walking by themselves down the sidewalk. It was nice to get away from the tower every once in a while. They could only take Chase's attitudes for so long, and Marshall himself needed a breather from all the chaos that had been going on. That's great! Rocky chirped, hopping a little. It's so nice to know that other places practice going green. But both went to the same trash bin, the lab finished. It literally didn't matter. Marshall could be heard barely holding in a laugh. Rocky snapped his head to his partner, eyes widened in shock. What? Why would anyone do that? I don't know. Customer appeal? Shrugged the brown lab. A lot of places and companies like to make it look like they support or do something just for customer appreciation, Marshall explained. It's funny, you think they care and they say they care, but they don't. The mixed breed stared with a bewildered expression, like his entire life's purpose had been shattered in 4 seconds. It was almost humorous how Rocky was near obsessed with what he called the quote-unquote green movement, happily separating trash for recycling and making use of discarded items. Everyone knew he was pure-hearted for thinking such, but one dog in green wasn't exactly going to change the world. Rocky, you are about to— Oh! The mix suddenly slammed into a stop sign, as he was too distracted from Zuma's statement to watch the path before him. He stumbled backward from the impact, wobbling for a second before hitting the pavement. Marshall couldn't hold in his laughter anymore as he let out a massive wheeze, followed by an assault of giggles and laughing. I You're turning into me! Zuma rolled his eyes and smiled softly, moving to help him up. You okay? I want to find that restaurant, Rocky growled in determination. What? I said I want to find that place and rip them a new one! The mix snarled, accepting Zuma's paw as he was pulled back up. I'll save you tweets for when you come back, the lab giggled in amusement. I'm serious! Didn't say you won't. Rocky grumbled to himself as they rounded a sidewalk corner. The shopping plaza was just a little ways away. As dogs, walks were always good for the soul, and some much-needed exercise was all Zuma needed to call it a day. At most, he was just amused at Rocky's blind confidence. It was entertaining to see his close friend get worked up over little things and then swear to change the world. Rocky himself didn't feel the same way. As far as he knew, he had a heart as large as a Great Dane, and he could conquer anything if he really tried. One day, Zuma, Rocky sighed. One day you'll see how much I can really do. Don't let Chase hear you say that, pointed the Dalmatian. He'll give you one of his looks. The lab smiled warmly. Well, try to take it easy before that day happens. Now let's get these tweets before Wubble whips down the entire lookout. You ever want to get that speech impediment taken care of? Rocky offered. The lab instantly turned his head away with a stubborn look. No. Now it was Rocky's turn to laugh. It was always fun to poke Zuma for the one thing he hated. He seemed to be one dog spared from an immediate pillow to the face whenever they mentioned Zuma's impediment. Rocky didn't question why he got special treatment like that, but he wouldn't complain anytime soon. They continued bickering as they walked, ranting about small topics that were utterly meaningless in the greater scope of things. They soon rounded another corner, and both dogs stopped in their tracks at the sight before them. Huh? Rocky recoiled. What are they doing? Down the street up ahead, multiple roadblocks had been set up, completely barricading off the main part of a town. Dark vehicles were parked behind it, seemingly acting as another wall to ensure nothing crossed the line. Marshall halted in his steps, almost shrinking down in size as he moved backward. Rocky took a step back when he recognized two dogs watching over the structure. Standing at the sidelines were armored dogs identical to the one scarred into the mixed breed's head. No! The mix stumbled back, starting to run with fear in his eyes. Rocky, wait! Zuma tried to say, but his friend had already fled several feet away. I'll find him. Marshall turned, following Rocky. Narrowing his eyes, the lab slowly approached the border. The armored dog had already noticed him a long time ago, and was not taking his eyes away as Zuma cautiously walked up.
Leave, Labrador!
The guard called out to him.
This section of town is closed!
Closed? Zuma repeated, confusion in his eyes. How can it be closed like that?
Because we say so!
Barked the large dog.
Now leave before you're detained!
Befuddled as he was, the lab decided he liked his life and quickly turned away, leaving the scene. He eventually found Rocky hiding under a park bench a few seconds later, shaking like a leaf. Marshall was actually sitting on the bench above him, looking deep in thought as he waited for the lab to return. Concern washed over Zuma as he tried to speak a few words to his recycle friend, but with no response. Rocky was barely recovering from his own interactions with the ACG and needed to be escorted home. Zuma would ensure Rocky would see safety, but not before turning to Marshall. Tell Chase and Wida. The Dalmatian nodded and spoke into his pup tag. Chase? He asked, contacting his close friend first.
What is it?
Came a rather tired-sounding voice. Come to the city park as fast as you can, Marshall said fearfully. Seriously, you need to hurry! It's those dogs again! He ended the call and quickly contacted Ryder. It was moments like this that reminded Chase he hadn't slept in a seriously long time. After talking with an awfully unhelpful dog at the cafe, all he wanted to do was collapse on his bed and dream of pup treats. But he couldn't sleep now. Now he was running down the sidewalk through the town, his bed miles away. Chase didn't want to admit there were moments where he hated being in charge of everything. It was one thing for the ACG soldiers to impede on their missions, but it was a whole other thing for them to hurt his friends, and it was an entirely different ballpark for them to interfere with the city. He was growing sick of these dogs. He didn't know where they came from or what they wanted. All they were doing now was harm. It didn't take long for him to find the roadblocks. It wasn't even the one Zuma had walked up to. The border had already cut through the city and divided out a large portion of the shopping districts. Taking careful steps, he observed the gates that had been built and spotted people on the other side trying to cross through it. Every time, an armored dog either talked them away or maced the person right in the eyes. Chase winced as a man, blinded from the spray, was helplessly dragged off to an undisclosed location. Spotting two dogs guarding the gates, Chase took a deep breath and wandered closer.
Hey!
The guard spotted the shepherd through his goggles.
Back off!
"What's going on?" Chase asked. "Where did they take that man?"
I said back off, puppy!
The armored animal retorted. "Hey, I'm the police division here," the shepherd argued. "I have the right to know."
You? Police?
The tactical dog tilted his head.
You are insane.
"No, I'm—"
Hey, Gavin!
The dog suddenly turned, calling to someone a few feet away.
Check out this puppy! He says he's a police officer!
Chase flattened his ears in mild embarrassment, letting his head lower a little as a second, shorter dog ran up the gate.
No way, seriously?
They bellowed.
That little thing?
"I'm with the Paw Patrol," he tried to explain. His own tail started to dart under him.
Ooh, I'm so scared!
Chuckled the ACG dog.
The Paw Patrol, essentially a bunch of orphaned puppies playing dress-up.
Chase nearly growled. "I'm not here to be made fun of. I want to know why you're closing down the city." The two guards shared a brief laugh before turning back to the puppy.
Look, kid, even if you are a real police officer, we can't fly that info to just anyone. You registered in CAP?
"The what?" The police dog tilted his head.
The Civilian Assistance Program.
The guard explained.
Your friends and neighbors applied to assist us in our operations in exchange for money or protection. If you want to know anything, you need to be cleared to help us first.
Chase picked his ears up, thinking over the new information. "How do I apply?"
Well, first of all,
The shorter guard chuckled.
I think you need to have hit puberty first. So...
They both laughed again. "I've hit puberty." Chase trailed off, lowering his head once again.
Look,
A guard laughed off.
go find the tent in front of City Hall. You can get interviewed there. But don't hold your breath.
Narrowing his eyes at the bullies, Chase sharply turned and ran off, both guards still laughing behind him. His teeth clenched as he tried to simmer down the rage that boiled within him. No one took him seriously. He was a fully fledged member of law enforcement, and all anyone ever did was laugh at him. Sure, he was tiny compared to the ACG soldiers, but he had the right to be recognized for what he was. It was no matter. He had a real lead to use now. All he had to do was pass a simple interview, and all true intentions would hopefully be revealed.
Chase?
Ryder's voice came on through his tag. "Doing some field work, sir," he reported. I have a lead on the ACG.
Wait, really?
They have a tent at City Hall where I can apply for CAP, Chase explained. I should be able to...
Chase, I'm going to stop you right there. Whatever you're planning on doing, stop it.
The police dog hit the brakes, coming to a stop with a surprised expression. What? Why?
I don't want you getting in the middle of the ACG.
Ryder explained sternly.
Those dogs are military extremists. I'm not going to have you get roped in.
But sir, I really have something here, Chase protested. I have the right to know what's going on.
It's not happening, Chase. Get back here, and that's an order!
Ryder finished, slightly raising his voice at the end. Anger and confusion rose within the shepherd. Why was everything being torn from him? It wasn't fair. Right when he had something, Ryder stepped in and slapped it out of his paws. What was Ryder getting so worked up about anyway? Chase was a police officer, and officers knew how to handle themselves. His anger quickly turned to determination, and his mind began churning an idea. Yes, sir, he replied. I'll head back.
All right then.
Once Ryder went offline, Chase grinned to himself. He'd listen to him, for now. He had his own plans, his own tasks to complete. All he needed now was for his friends to stay out of the way and get clear. Regardless of what Ryder said, he was going to City Hall, and he was going to get answers on the ACG, no matter how far into the lion's den he'd have to go. The lookout was filled with colorful stage lights as the music echoed out, barely contained by the glass windows. A sharp beat could be heard from the outside clearing, then met with a chorus of rhythm and melodies. It was the perfect afternoon for Putt Putt Boogie, and they celebrated the momentous occasion by cranking the volume up severely higher than usual. Chase returned sometime later, tiredly trudging up the sidewalk as his tail dragged on the ground. Once the muffled rave music hit his ears, an audible groan escaped his lips as he looked up at the tower. Sure enough, brightly colored lights were blaring out, turning the lookout into somewhat of a massive disco ball. Ugh, seriously now? Chase groaned to himself. All the world was in chaos, and his friends were having dance parties. Upstairs, the entire room was bursting with deafening disco music. Rubble was dancing on his own a little ways off, not participating in the actual video game. He wasn't relatively a great dancer, but that never bothered him. Everyone was always happy to see the bulldog be himself. Zuma and Marshall were the players, dancing away on the platforms as if their lives depended on it. They were moving in all directions, moving their bodies as if the very rhythm flowed through them. The scores were close, maintaining near equal numbers as the song continued. But there could only be one winner, and both dogs were fighting tooth and nail for the trophy. Rocky was sitting, mesmerized by how any dog could possibly move in such ways. Sky was sitting next to the mix, cheering on the duo as they moved. She could only watch, as her cough had slightly worsened, and would surely break her down from an explosive movement. The middle elevator opened, and Chase grimaced as the music hit him full force. No one had seen or heard him enter the main floor. The sheer volume of the game was overbearing. Flattening his ears in annoyance, he walked up next to Rocky. The mix was gleefully bouncing to the beat, and turned to smile at his shepherd friend, expecting him to return the happy look. Chase merely raised an eyebrow, unhappy his mission to City Hall was aborted. Are you gonna play? Rocky asked excitedly, having to bark over the music. No! Where's Ryder? The shepherd retorted. What? The mix cocked his head. I said, where's Ryder? Chase shouted over the deafening disco. Outside, working on his ATV! Rocky pointed back to the windows. The shepherd loudly groaned, sharply turning back to the elevator. Rocky frowned at his friend's actions, wanting to call him back and invite him to a dance-off. Chase re-entered the elevator and hit the button. The doors swiftly shut, slightly muffling the music, then increasingly quieted it as he moved downward. Chase decided he'd rather not go deaf today and took a second to lick his paw. Arriving outside, Chase left the elevator and walked around to the garage. The smell of motor oil hit his nose as he walked onto the pavement, coming up to Ryder. "I thought you were joining the party upstairs," he commented, wedging a screwdriver under his vehicle. "I'm not feeling it tonight." Chase sat down. "I don't get how they can cut loose like that when the ACG is tearing the city into pieces." "Well, sometimes you gotta take a breather," Ryder shrugged, wiping his forehead. "It's unhealthy to not take breaks every once in a while." "But those dogs are—" "Yes, I'm aware of what they're doing." The boy raised an eyebrow at the dog. "Why are you still on this? All we have to do is stay out of their way, and they'll eventually leave. As a police dog, I feel responsible for keeping my city safe, and it's not your city, Chase." The shepherd hung his head, huffing in quiet agitation. "I know, it's just... I don't know why we're not doing anything about them." "We are, but it's not you doing it." Ryder pushed himself out from under the ATV, getting up. Chase tilted his head in confusion. "Tonight I'm leaving for the mountains," he explained, cleaning off his tools. "Leaving?" Chase jolted. "Now? Why?" "Just for a few days. I'm going to try and get the ACG out the old-fashioned way," Ryder explained. "Me and Everest will go over some legal papers and see if we can bend a rule or something to get them out." "Why can't Everest come here?" "Don't ask questions, Chase. Just do as you're told," Ryder told him sternly. "While I'm gone, you're in charge. Call me if Sky's sickness gets worse." Chase was severely taken off guard, nearly barreled over by the sudden reveal that Ryder was going to completely leave in the night. He opened his mouth to say something, but decided to shut it for fear of angering his owner. He'd follow the orders, all good dogs did. Yet something was pulling at the back of his mind. There was something that Ryder wasn't telling him, and he knew it. He knew better than to challenge the boy, however, and the shepherd merely nodded in acceptance. Ryder would be leaving, and Chase was in charge. Nightfall shrouded over the lookout. The agonizing music was still emitting from the lookout. Chase poked his head out of his kennel in irritation, pleading for a power outage to fry the game. The only time the party stopped was when Ryder went up there to announce his departure. While it was mostly met with surprised exclaims, most of the pups were understanding. Chase didn't share their initial thoughts, as he couldn't help narrowing his eyes as he watched Ryder speed away on his ATV into the night. A lingering feeling was bleeding into what felt like abandonment. Surely Ryder couldn't just leave in the middle of all this. It didn't matter right now. The police dog had other things to attend to, and without his owner getting in the way, he could complete his own mission. Surely all of the others were distracted with their games, so none of them should get in his way either. Taking a deep breath, Chase stepped out of his kennel into the night. His mind fired off a quick way to speed to City Hall, preferably one that minimized attention on himself. He considered taking his rig, as that would be the faster option, but it would certainly draw some prying eyes. Chase frowned, wondering if taking one of the other pups' rigs was a better option, then realized he didn't know how to drive them. He was forced to settle on his own vehicle, but had to drive with lights and sirens off. It was the only option. Throwing on a dark jacket in an attempt to conceal his identity, Chase hopped in his rig and started the engine. The drive into the city was anxiety-filled, paranoia creeping up the shepherd's back as he neared City Hall. Did he really know what he was doing? Was this a smart idea, To go behind Ryder's back? Could he still turn around and go back on it all? If he had the option to leave, why wasn't he taking it? He finally parked his rig on the side of the road, turning off the engine and hopping out. He had arrived at the tall government building that was City Hall. It was almost intimidating, being a small puppy on the sidewalk approaching such a structure. Here goes nothing, Chase gulped. The overhead road lights illuminated the courtyard before him. A small tent, dark blue in color, sat idly before the main doors. Underneath it was a white foldable table with some papers on it. A rather tired-looking husky sat with his chin resting on the table, seemingly nodding off. Chase approached the table, despite it towering over his small height. He gently cleared his throat, and the husky's eyes snapped open. Huh? He picked his head up, looking out in confusion. Down here. The dog leaned forward over the table, finally spotting the small police dog sitting before him. The husky instantly gave a sour expression. What do you want? Is this where I apply for CAP? Chase looked up at him. The older dog held a surprised expression for a solid second, then stuttered for a moment before looking down at the papers. Are you serious? Yes, the puppy said flatly. Well, I'll tell you now. We don't accept puppies, growled the husky. Shouldn't you be in bed? I'm not just a puppy. Chase narrowed his eyes, standing up on his back legs and placing his forearms on the table. I'm from the Paw Patrol division. We practically run the city. Oh, it's you six. The older dog rolled his eyes. Honestly, it's goddamned hilarious that this city has to rely on a team of puppies. Maybe so, but I'm still law enforcement, the police dog argued, and I want in. I told you, we don't accept puppies. But I'm not just a puppy. I have the right to know what's going on. The husky glanced to the side. Kid, I don't really know what to do here, he shrugged. Paw Patrol or not, we don't take puppies. I'm not taking no for an answer. The shepherd flattened his ears. Those words will get you tased. Look, is there a supervisor I can talk to? Chase submitted, slightly flexing his dull claws on the table. The husky raised an eyebrow, then rolled his eyes. You're gonna play that card, huh? Fine. He reached a paw to his chest and revealed a collar that was partially hidden from his fur. Chase immediately recognized it as a tag with a radio, just like his pup tag. Captain, sir, we have a situation out here, he spoke into it. Chase returned to all fours, satisfied he was making progress, slightly wagging his tail. After enduring a few more seconds of the dog's hostility, Chase turned his head as the city hall's door swung open, and out walked a dog that made him stop in his tracks. Up until now, he was feeling confident in his ability to see this until the end. But now all he wanted to do was run home. His confidence completely died as the second dog walked out, brimming with authority, and Chase recognized the Belgian Malinois instantly as the exact dog who intercepted their last mission. Cyrus walked out with a stern face and tending some nagging sheepdog ready to throw obscenities in the air. He was instead met with a small puppy, and his eyes widened in surprise. You? The Malinois muttered, semi-taking a step back. Yeah, Chase breathed. Me again. I thought I told you to stop getting involved, Cyrus growled, baring his sharpened fangs. I'm not! Chase fired back defensively, then hesitated. Well, yes, I am, but I'm not intruding like last time. What? Cyrus shook his head, not believing the small puppy would even dare to overstep this far. You're intruding now just as much as you were the other day. Well, I need to be in the loop somehow. The police dog took a step forward. So, I'm here, applying for CAP. Ugh. Cyrus deflated slightly. Come inside, not out here. Feeling uncertain of himself, but still holding on to his flickers of determination, Chase nodded as Cyrus turned around and headed inside the building. Following behind him, the puppy felt a chill creep up his spine. Just how deep into the rabbit hole had he fallen? The Malinois pushed open the glass doors and quickly walked through the lobby and down a hobby. They passed the front desk with the simple potted plants that dotted its edges, passing under the ceiling banner that bore the emblem of Adventure Bay. As Chase walked behind the larger dog, his mind went wild with the new territory he was staying in. He had 1,000 questions and became increasingly annoyed the longer they went unanswered. Cyrus opened a door off to the side, leading to a small room with nothing but a table and 2 chairs. It resembled a place where you'd interview new employees or interrogate a captive. On the table was a closed folder. "Sit," Cyrus ordered, walking in. Chase instinctively lowered his rear to the floor and sat with a straight and firm posture, tilting his head slightly upward. "In the chair," the Malinois said, exasperated. Oh, right," Chase tried to laugh off. "Sorry, I'm used to doing that stuff for, treats, you know." He chuckled nervously as he climbed into the firm plastic chair. Cyrus raised an eyebrow. "Are you absolutely sure you want a part in this?" he questioned, sitting across from the puppy. "Because once you get in the loop, you can't come out." "Of course," the shepherd nodded eagerly. "When I became a police dog, they told me it was the next step in life." No. Cyrus cut him off. "This is nothing like that. You'll be under a confidential agreement. No one can know of your involvement, or you'll face repercussions." Chase frowned, drooping his ears. "Why not?" "Because." Cyrus leaned in slightly, trying to drive home a point. "The things that the ACG does and deals with are nothing like you've ever seen. It's more serious. We see things that will not hesitate to kill you or others." Chase's expression changed, his frown slowly turning to mild shock. "And the reason we're here in Adventure Bay..." He hesitated for a moment. "Trust me, you'll be better off not knowing." He placed his paws on the table, leaning in slightly. "Chase, I beg of you, just go home. This is not something a puppy should be roped into." The shepherd thought for a long moment, then proudly puffed out his chest. "Chase is on the case," he said with a smile. "But are you?" Cyrus questioned. "You say you're a police dog?" "Top of my class." "What class?" "Well, mostly writers' programs," Chase confessed, glancing to the side. "So you're not a cop?" Cyrus narrowed his eyes. "I am!" The puppy shot forward. He struggled to find the words. "I've just never really seen action in Adventure Bay like the things you see on TV." The 2 dogs sat in silence for a brief moment before Cyrus spoke again. "Do you have a gun?" Chase shuffled his paws uncomfortably. "Yes, I do." "I never see it on you. Is it in your pup pack?" "No, it's actually in a storage crate back at home," the puppy explained. "I have a large bunker where I keep most of my gear, mainly the ones I've never needed before." "Like?" Cyrus pushed. "Mostly riot gear," Chase shrugged. "I think I even have tear gas, but I've never needed any of it, so it just all stays in there." "Yeah, I noticed this city doesn't see much action to begin with," nodded the Malinois. "It's usually just cats and trees and lost mail. I imagine our presence has been quite abrupt." "It has," Chase frowned. "If I can be honest, I really don't like what you're doing to the city." "Oh?" The older dog tilted his head. "I don't. And maybe if you told me why you're here and your reasons for such, maybe I'd understand and even want to help. Is a criminal on the loose or something? No, Chase, it's so much more than that, Cyrus pressed. Then just tell me! Are you sure? He growled in response. Are you 100% sure you want to sign the papers, see shit that will scar you for life, and never be able to tell anyone? Is that where you want to take your life? Yes! Chase nearly barked. I want to help my city! Cyrus leaned back and gave a long sigh, trying to make sense of the puppy before him. In a way, he almost admired Chase's determination, but he feared what would be exposed to the poor dog. And yet, his mind seemed to be made up. There was truly no turning back. Fine, he submitted, reaching behind him and pulling out a piece of paper. Sign here. A pen was haphazardly tossed before Chase as the paper was slid in front of him. And before you sign, I'm giving you one last chance to go home. Chase stared at the paper for a long time before picking up the pen in his mouth and signing his name. Although holding a pen in one's mouth made writing difficult, as Chase produced on the line what resembled chicken scratch. It didn't matter. A signature was a signature. Alright. Puh! Chase spat out the pen. Do I get a shirt or something? No, Cyrus said firmly. I guess I have a lot to tell you. We'll start at the beginning. Chase nodded, sitting comfortably. For the record, Cyrus began, you are completely prohibited from telling anyone outside of the ACG of your new position. This is for your protection, he finished, watching Chase nod. The duties of CAP members are to assist the ACG and report their findings. But since you're part of the Paw Patrol division, I have a more special assignment for you. Chase nodded, listening intently. You want me to come out and say it? Cyrus braced himself. Chase, there's something loose in Adventure Bay, and before you ask, it's not a criminal. It's something different. Something more. It's what we can only label as a biological threat, a parasite of sorts. Like a disease? Chase asked. No, diseases can be cured. His eyes flicked to the side. Well, most of them. But this thing isn't a sickness. It's alive. We don't have a lot of data on what it is exactly. We just know that it's a creature, a parasitic organism of sorts. A week or so ago, he began, there was a breach in a secret research facility. We're not paid to know the exact details, but one of their experiments escaped into the wild. Cyrus reached to the folder that had been sitting on the table and opened it, revealing a bunch of papers and some Polaroid photos. Chase watched intently as Cyrus pressed his paw on one of the photos and moved it to Chase's view. Looking down, Chase tried to focus on the photo before him. It was slightly dark, possibly taken in low light, and appeared to be of a still room. He could see tables and overturned chairs, like something barreled through the room and knocked everything over. The walls were covered in either waterfalls of wires and metal coils, or plagued in grime, giving the photo a sickly, unkempt feel. Chase's eyes narrowed, focusing on one of the tables. There was a silhouette poking out of the corner, a small head, with an arm and paw sticking out as well. It was a dog, with tall ears and a narrow muzzle. It was too dark to identify any fine details, but the glowing pinpricks it had for eyes was clear as day. Is that a dog? Chase asked, looking up at Cyrus. No, Chase. He shook his head. Meet Malice. Who? The puppy asked, confused. Cyrus sighed, clearly growing uncomfortable with relaying the information. Malice is a unicellular organism. You know what that means, right? It means their entire body is simply one cell. Chase nodded. Cyrus continued, tapping his paw. The Ferox Malus cell possesses parasitic traits. That dog in the photo was a test subject they injected the cell into. Within minutes, Ferox Malus had completely taken over their body, taking control of their mind. You can't see it in the photo, but its skin slowly started decaying. Chase shrunk further into the chair as Cyrus leaned over the table. Chase, its skin withered away. Sure, the dog's face is mostly intact, but the body is nothing but blood, bone, and vein-covered muscles. Once the Ferox Malus parasite enters your blood, you're turned in minutes. There doesn't seem any way to fight it back yet. What? Chase squeaked. To make matters worse, Cyrus growled, the dog, whom we can now safely refer to as Ferox Malus itself, has survival as its best interest. It wants to consume. It will attack and devour anything that crosses its path. And that thing is smart, Chase. It's smart enough to know when to hide and stay in the shadows. According to the research papers we were given, it knows when to split off its main cell from the body to escape death. The old body is left to rot and decay, and Ferox Malus finds something, I don't know, a bug or a person to ride on and find its next host. Chase could barely say anything. His eyes widened and ears flattened. He barely made sense of what was being thrown at him. And when it does grow big enough, Cyrus shrugged, the host's body begins to rupture, as if losing its skin wasn't enough. It becomes a horrific predator, using tendrils to snatch anything it comes across and drag it into its body, adding to its size and biomass until it's nothing but a massive dog-shaped, gory monster looking to endlessly consume all life in the city. And now this monster is loose in Adventure Bay, Cyrus finished. We've seen the reports. Local people and dogs are suddenly vanishing. It can't be a coincidence. You're kidding, Chase quivered. This is why you're here? Cyrus nodded. This is why we're closing off the city, and why we shut down your mission on the missing woman and dog. See, Ferox Malus is smart enough to know when to hide. It'll burrow itself into your bloodstream, but not instantly take over your brain. It literally hides inside you, waiting for the right moment to emerge. In fact, one of your Paw Patrol friends could have the parasite in them right now and not even realize it. What? The shepherd recoiled, horror creeping within him as he remembered Sky's lingering illness. So here's your special assignment, Cyrus concluded. Go home and watch your friends. Take note of where they are at all times, and I do mean watch them. A sign of dormant infection could be excessive nosebleeds, hobbling, almost drunken movement, or show symptoms of fever. The mission of the ACG is to find Ferox Malus, contain it, then return the monster to the facility. So if one of your friends ends up... He stopped himself, noting the puppy's terrified expression. Look, if one of your friends ends up being the host, call me ASAP. He passed Chase what looked like a pup tag, complete with the clip to be attached to a collar. Unless they're already merged into one being, Ferox Malus can't infect multiple bodies at once. So if you see it, call us, and we'll send over everything we have. Chase looked down at the pup tag. The little piece of metal was clearly meant to be a lifeline, with the small button in the middle that would activate a homing beacon. Gulping fearfully, he reached a paw forward and took the tag. I'm sorry about our brutality. Cyrus hung his head apologetically. We're really trying to get this creature contained and out of here. So head home. Keep in mind what I said, okay? Chase nodded, barely able to contain his horrified quivering. Taking the new pup tag in his mouth, he climbed down from the chair and left the room, a near traumatized expression on his face. Cyrus watched him go, fearing for the puppy's psychological health. That night, Chase dreamed of a quiet town. He found himself walking through empty streets, blanketed in dense fog that obscured much of his vision. He tried to call out, but not a single soul answered him. Old cars laid abandoned in the streets, and empty stores and offices lined every building. Scraps of paper and leaves roamed free in the air, the distant sound of church bells ringing out an unknown distance away. Chase idly wandered the streets, turning his head around in an attempt to find anyone to make sense of the forgotten world he'd been taken to. Hearing nothing but his own paw steps and gently humming wind in his fur, he began to wonder if he was truly alone. However, he soon arrived at a new structure that had emerged through the fog. The lookout. His ears stiffened in surprise as he looked up at the tower in confusion. The main entrance had several wooden boards nailed into it, barring anyone from accessing the elevator. Feeling a cold mist rise within him, Chase shakily approached his home until he stood before the blocked entrance. Hesitantly peering through the boards, he caught a glimpse of a dog standing in the open elevator. It was a German Shepherd, judging by the tail and ears, and was hunched over as if it was choking. Chase made an attempt to call out to it, and the dog slowly stopped moving and peered back at Chase. The dog had a look of hopelessness, resignation, like it knew it had nothing left to live for. The dog began bleeding from the mouth, and Chase stepped back as the fog closed in around him. Chase opened his eyes, awakening from the dream. He sat up sharply, the cold feeling still lingering inside him. A few tears instantly left his eyes, the shrouded loneliness of the dream leaving a scar on his mind. He shook his head, trying to push away the empty ambiance that filled his head as he slowly broke into a quiet sob. The returning drive back to the lookout felt unreal, almost static, as Chase struggled to process the presence of a parasitic monster in Adventure Bay without trying to crash his rig. Watching the road was almost hypnotizing, lulling Chase into a bland state of numbness that seemed to block the sounds of everything around him. At that moment, all he could hear was distant white noise in his head. Scratching groans that could only be identified as a broken guitar repeatedly churned in his ears, and an oddly soothing feeling washed over him. Upon returning home, he didn't acknowledge his friends or see if they were around. He just went right to bed. Now awakened from his dream, Chase heard the falling rain tap against the roof of his kennel, quiet thunder echoing in the distance. Checking his wall clock, the shepherd realized it was only 4 a.m. Lowering himself back onto his bed, he tried to shut his eyes and fast forward through the night by falling back into slumber, although his body refused to rest. Was it true what Cyrus had said? Chase pondered over what Cyrus had told him, his tail curling underneath him in silent distress. A monster in Adventure Bay, a creature who killed others without remorse. Never in his life had he encountered such a thing. He had watched the news plenty of times, leaning back in horror and disgust as he read about the atrocities going on in the world around him. But never once had something of the sort entered his own city. A monster who dragged innocent victims to merge with itself. A cold, emotionless figure who held no concept of mercy. And the worst of all, a detail that left a dark stain on Chase's mind. The creature could hide dormant in the bodies of others. Surely that had been a lie, a cruel, twisted joke from the captain to scare the small puppy. The police dog's eyes watered again as a mellow wave of sound entered his head, complete with the flickering melody that resembled a grieving piano. He tried to force it out, but a foul image stabbed into his head. He saw his beloved friends, Marshall, Rocky, Zuma, Rubble, Sky, and Everest, their bodies leached and ensnared into one another. The monster's bloody tendrils sewed them together as it slowly overpowered their minds, merging them into one horrible being. He violently shook his head, getting up to pace around his kennel as his body began quivering. Someone in Adventure Bay was being used as a shell, containing the monster as it silently hid within their body. Chase stopped, staring ahead at his wall as a somber song wept in his mind. If this person, this host, was not found and destroyed as soon as possible, everything he knew and loved would be at risk. "I won't let this happen," Chase breathed out, then turned to exit his kennel. He walked out through the entrance and entered the rain, instantly soaking his brown fur. The night had shrouded the land around him, but he knew exactly where he was going. Walking through the rain, he traversed across the wet grass into the trees. He had no fear of the darkness around him, nor of the pounding rain like Rocky. For a moment, he barely noticed how wet he was getting, his mind overtaking his senses and seemingly blocking them out. Eventually, he came to a large hatch in the ground with a rusted turning wheel sticking out. It was slightly flooding over from the rain, but he knew when it was built all those years ago that it was well watertight. All he had to do was turn the wheel a few times, and the steel hatch would slowly unlock, its secrets ready to be exposed. Chase sighed and placed his paws on it. "Chase?" called a voice behind him. The police dog spun around in surprise, a shocked expression plastered on his face. He relaxed when he recognized a familiar chocolate lab. "What are you doing out here?" Zuma raised an eyebrow, tilting his head. "Why are you out here?" Chase countered, turning to face the lab. "Because I like walking in the rain. You know that," he replied, then looked out past Chase. "What's that on the ground?" The shepherd looked away, gentle shame resting over him. He wanted to lie and say it was nothing, but Zuma wasn't an idiot. He realized there was no hope in trying to play it off, so Chase resigned and opened up to his friend. "Promise not to tell anyone?" Sure. But what is it?" "It's a bunker," Chase explained. "Ryder had it built back when the Paw Patrol was just beginning." "Oh, cool!" Zuma bounced, wagging his tail slightly. "What's in it?" "You sure you want to know?" "Well, yeah." The lab walked closer. "I'm curious now." Chase sighed and returned to facing the hatch. "Just remember, you promised not to tell anyone." He placed his paws on the wheel and rotated it a few times to the left. Inner mechanisms could be heard underneath at work, slowly unlocking the dark vault of painful tools Chase fought for years to never touch. "Can you actually give me a paw with this?" he asked apologetically, coming to the handle that stretched across the front side in his teeth. Zuma nodded and walked to the opposite side, clamping his teeth into the other end of the handle. With the small count to 3, they grunted and pulled with all their might, slowly opening the large hatch. It made an unsettling noise as it opened, like a creaking elderly man trying to open his jaw. Warm air began escaping from the bunker. The moonlight illuminated a narrow staircase as rain already began invading through the opening. Zuma peered down into the dark corridor. "Wow," he breathed in awe. Chase took a deep breath and began descending the staircase, motioning for the lab to follow him. The dogs were bathed over with warm air as they traveled down, both jumping slightly as the hatch loudly closed behind them. After a few moments, they reached the solid concrete ground, and Chase flicked a light switch with his nose. Light suddenly shone brightly from the overhead lights, banishing the darkness from the corners of the bunker. Zuma could be heard gasping as the narrow corridor's contents were finally revealed. The bunker was simply a large hallway that stretched out an impressive length. The walls were lined with crates and wall hangers, all displaying various displays of weapons and tactical gear. Zuma's glee of discovering something new was quickly replaced with surprise, then bled into horror.
"What is all this?"
he asked fearfully, resting his eyes on a large riot shield that leaned against the wall, shining in the light.
"The police division refers to this as riot gear," Chase explained. "I've had this stuff for years, just never needed to use any."
The lab seemed frozen to the floor, fearing that taking even a step would accidentally set off something explosive. Chase, however, was already walking around, looking at each item up and down. He passed by shelves of idle tear gas grenades, forever waiting for their rings to be pulled, leading to the spewing of irritant gas that could make anyone clear away. Zuma fearfully crept past a wall of tasers and batons, bulletproof vests hanging on hooks.
"Chase,"
he began.
"why are we here?"
The shepherd sighed and looked back at his friend.
"I just needed to get something."
He approached a small case sitting against the wall. It shone in polished silver, resting in place as if it was hibernating. Carefully avoiding eye contact with Zuma, he gently undid the clasps and opened the case. His eyes laid to rest on a sight he previously swore he'd never see again: a small handgun. The standard issue for police officers, a semi-automatic pistol meant to be holstered on one's person. A tool for control and violence officers of the law were trained to be unafraid of drawing. The shepherd tried to prepare himself for a shudder that would course through his body, but it never came. He expected himself to be unsettled at the sight of the gun, but he was oddly unfeeling at its presence, like finding an item you had lost some time ago. Ferox Malice, the parasite that could be stalking the bodies of Adventure Bay as they spoke, had to be stopped. Chase would never sleep again if the city fell to ruins, and he could have done something about it. If it was true that Ferox Malice was hiding inside someone, then he would have to do what had to be done. He had to find the host, whoever it may be, and kill them. It was his duty as a police dog to protect the people he cared about, and he would be damned if he didn't pull out every stop to hunt down the threat. Before Zuma could see the weapon, he quickly shut the case, making a mental note to return later with his pup pack. The pack had a secret compartment meant to hold and holster the gun. It was never a modification. His pup pack always had it since day one, yet Chase resented using it, and the gun he was given forever hibernated in the artillery bunker hidden in the forest. Until now. Zuma could be heard shuffling back the hatch, eager to escape the corridor that contained the tools of violence and order.
"We missed you at the Pup-Pup Boogie contest,"
he said nervously, trying to steer into a more light-hearted conversation. Chase turned back to him, pushing the gun case back into place. "Sorry, I had an errand to run."
"It's fine."
Zuma slightly lowered his head.
"We had to stop early because Sky was coughing."
It was those words that made Chase's ears shoot up in alarm, and he prayed Zuma didn't notice. A freezing wave of dread rushed him over, stabbing into his head as his heart quickened. The shepherd seemed to draw back, attempting to hide his recoiled expression, but faint twitches of his face betrayed him. A horrible truth rose from the depths of all that was horrible and seized Chase, and his heart sunk. Cyrus never mentioned if the monster had a preference for the bodies it hid in, meaning his own Paw Patrol was at even more risk than he had imagined. He slowly looked toward Zuma with a fearful expression, and the lab stepped back in unease. Hastily, Chase studied the other dog up and down, flicking his eyes to each corner of the lab, searching for the smallest hint of something amiss.
"Chase?"
wearily asked the lab, slightly retracting in discomfort.
Why are you looking at me like that? Narrowing his eyes, the shepherd slowly moved to the side, flexing his paws with faint movements. Why are you outside in the pouring rain at 4 in the morning? He pressed the question as he began approaching Zuma, sniffing around him. I told you, I wanted to walk in the rain. The smaller lab stepped back, unease growing within him, and his flight response was mere moments away from sending him into a run. Chase raised an eyebrow, then sighed as he relaxed. Sorry, I'm just on edge. Why though? Flicking his eyes back to the gun case, the shepherd shook his head, pushing away the gentle chimes that rung in his head. Just bad dreams. As the night went on, they left the bunker and shut the hatch behind them. Chase made the lab swear up and down he wouldn't disclose its location to anyone, warning him that it was quote-unquote federal property. As they returned to their respective dens, Zuma shrugged off the tense night and went to bed. The sun was barely peeking over the horizon when the clock struck 6 in the morning, an orange hue bleeding into the sky. No one noticed Chase slip away back into the forest, this time wearing his pup pack. He returned to the bunker and retrieved his handgun, holstering it into the hidden compartment of his pack. Chase's mind was screaming, his unease flooding him over as he felt himself disconnecting from the world around him. Who could he trust? Could anyone be trusted if they were all possible hosts for the parasite? Grimacing as he left the bunker again, now secretly armed, he returned to the lookout and gave a sweeping look at all his friends' kennels. Their homes made a circle around the lookout, a ring of dens each pup would find solace in. Chase grimaced and returned to his own kennel as the sun began rising further on the horizon. Yet the world around him seemed to appear in dense gray. The static in his head was noticeably becoming louder. It's well documented that dogs can feel nearly every emotion a human could experience. They're cognitively designed in such ways that they can feel happiness, sadness, anger, and especially fear. It's intriguing how fine-tuned their minds are to that of a person, as opposed to a mindless fish swimming in a cycle of unblinking static. Now, what of more complex emotions? Such things as love, shame, jealousy, guilt, or bashfulness. What happens when a dog is thrust into a situation they have no understanding of? The animal is suddenly bludgeoned with confusion, fear, paranoia, and no way to understand even a fraction of it. To learn that friends among you may not be what they seem can bring droplets of fear into one's head. Chase was afraid, terrified even, and hesitated even stepping outside. He occasionally glanced outside at the other dogs when they come out to play in the sun, trying to read their movements for anything unnatural. He especially narrowed his eyes every time Skye came into his field of vision. She seemed a little better, but a lack of symptoms didn't always mean the sickness was gone. In some cases, the pain suddenly vanishing could indicate the worst was about to ensue. Every now and then, Marshall would knock on his door, to which Chase rarely responded. The shepherd slipped out the next day, walking into town while avoiding eye contact with anyone. Despite not being in uniform, he still wore his pup pack, the visible straps connecting around his body. No one knew of the weapon that lay concealed within the backpack. All it needed was the audio cue of Chase's bark, and it would emerge. He had received a note under his door, ordering him to travel to the park for an important briefing. Usually, Chase would discard such a note and write it off as spam mail, but this note was explicitly signed by the ACG. As the wind brushed past his sides, Chase left the sidewalk as he crossed over into the grass. His mind still disobeyed his constant grips to clear his head, the static noise filling his ears and taking a life of its own. "I'm not crazy," the police dog breathed, shaking his head. He had lost significant hours of sleep, anxiety gripping him awake and leaving him afraid to shut his eyes for even a few minutes. He found a bright patch of grass and laid down on it, purposely straying away from the other dogs as much as he could. His attempts were futile, however, as out of the corner of his eye, he spotted a small terrier walking over to him. Chase stiffened, snapping his head in the other dog's direction. The terrier carried a smile on his face, a feeling of joy and carelessness. Chase knew this couldn't be the meetup. This dog was just an oblivious idiot, blind to the looming threat only he seemed to be aware of. "Hi," the terrier smiled. "I like your pup pack." Chase instantly growled in response, flattening his ears. Nothing could be trusted. Not a single one of the animals he shared the city with could be trusted. The terrier drew back in surprise, hints of confusion crossing his face. He wasn't at all expecting the hostility from the shepherd, knowing full well the reputation the Paw Patrol carried. The terrier held up his paws defensively. "I'm sorry, Piss off!" The smaller dog whimpered slightly and hastily turned, speeding off. Chase didn't leave the house thinking he would pull a gun on a random dog in the park, but the parasite could be anywhere. "You always talk to puppies like that?" came a voice to his left, and Chase whipped his head around. He relaxed slightly when he recognized the Belgian Malinois before him. "You told me that thing could be hiding anywhere," Chase waved off. "I swear, it's driving me crazy." "Awareness and vigilance are key, sure," Cyrus nodded as he approached. "But you can't snarl at every dog who comes before you." Chase raised an eyebrow, then sat up. "How do I know you're not infected?" "ACG members get screened twice a day," the Malinois explained, "including me." "Wait, you have a way to test yourselves for the virus?" Chase inquired. Cyrus nodded. "You give a blood sample on a swab," he explained. "You put it in a machine, and it scans you for Feroxmalis. If you're infected, it'll come back positive." The shepherd's eyes widened. "Wait, why can't I have one of those?" "That's why I'm here." Cyrus reached into a pocket on his belt, pulling out a small device about the size of a box of cigarettes. It was a dull gray in color, with a small screen and hole at the bottom. "It used to be for drug testing, but our engineers have modified it," the Malinois nodded, pushing it over to Chase. "They're valuable and limited, so we don't usually give them out like this." Chase looked up with a confused expression. "Then why is it being given to me?" "You're a special case, being the Paw Patrol and all," he explained it the best he could. "Also, have you seen the weather?" The puppy shook his head. "There's a storm coming," Cyrus warned. "And not a small one either. It's highly likely most communication lines will go dark. You may lose power as well." "Oh, how fantastic." Chase hung his head in exhaustion. "When that storm hits, the ACG will have to temporarily assist in emergency services, and our investigation will have to pause. The reason I gave you that device is that we're going to be up to our ankles in helping out the public, so I'm entrusting you to start my own investigation," Chase finished. "But if..." He stopped for a moment, wincing as dark thoughts returned to his head. "If one of my friends ends up being it, how will I call you if none of our comms have gone dark?" "That pup tag I gave you will still work," the Malinois pointed. "It's tied to an isolated radio frequency that works on its own. So if one of your friends becomes compromised..." "Yes, I know, I'll call you," Chase interrupted, growing agitated. "Sorry, I just..." A low wince left his mouth, and he confessed without realizing. I just don't like thinking about it. Cyrus sighed, briefly taking a moment to lick his paw. He knew Chase was just a puppy, and although he couldn't show it, he felt great sympathy for what the small dog may be about to go through. Look, I'm afraid too, he said softly. I just want all this mess to be taken care of, all these people safe, you know? After a few seconds of staring at the ground, Chase nodded slowly, saddened as he lowered himself back to the ground. It's my job to protect people. I understand, Cyrus nodded. But protecting people can be dangerous. Dogs in the army, well, they die all the time protecting their homes. That's just war. We've seen that since the dawn of time. Bitter words began to seep from Chase's teeth. This is different. Anyone around me could be a monster, and I have no way of telling. They're not monsters, Chase. Cyrus looked over at the puppy. Yes, they're a host, but they aren't monsters. Yet, the shepherd hissed. Well, that's why I gave you the blood reader. Test your friends, and certainly test yourself, he instructed. If a reading comes back positive, call us right away. Chase looked up at him, briefly glancing at a group of dogs that ran past. There was a lingering question that had been on his mind, and he feared the answer. Cyrus? Chase asked. What exactly will happen to someone when you find the parasite in them? The Malinois sighed, tilting his head back slightly as he contemplated the answer. He didn't want to unroll the truth onto the puppy, but at the same time, he couldn't lie here, not to Chase. We trapped them, essentially, he explained. Tried to seal them somewhere before Ferox Malice realizes they've been compromised. If we can't do it, and it erupts out of the host, I can only hope we can push it somewhere contained. Would the host survive this? Chase asked, voice growing weary. The larger dog looked away slightly, well aware that his answer wasn't going to be a happy one. Chase, we use the word erupt for a reason. I've seen the photos, the recordings. Ferox Malice tears itself out of the host's body, emerging out as a massive, gory creature. So, no, the host doesn't survive. Chase nodded in understanding. Get home, okay? The Malinois offered. I need to lead the ACG in our emergency relief for the storm. Your job right now is to protect your family. My family, Chase repeated, almost not understanding the meaning of the word. He hated saying it out loud, but there was no denying that he truly loved his friends. Marshall, who always made him laugh, Rocky's inspiring persistence to push forward, Zuma being the shoulder to cry on, Rubble as the one dog who everyone just adored, and Sky, the cockapoo Chase had shared countless missions with. He had to protect his family. He had to protect the ones he loved. Taking the device back home, Chase made haste in returning to his kennel. The storm clouds were already lurking in the sky above. It would only be a few hours before the rain began. As he entered his den and shut the door, a faint crack of thunder echoed above the city, a wordless warning of the terror to soon come. Sitting on his bed, Chase studied the blood reader before him, not much bigger than his own paw. He knew his friends would instantly question why the hell he was asking for blood samples. Such suspicions would put him in a compromising position. He'd have to be smart about this, and Chase lowered himself down to rest his chin on a pillow. The stress was getting to him, but at least now he had an opening, a flicker of foundation to make sense of the swirling chaos. All he had to do was find a way to retrieve blood samples from the others. It seemed crazy, but there had to be a way. There was a science to deception, and Chase wasn't qualified in the art. Even then, he worried about how the others would even perceive the idea of an unseen threat right under their noses. They had never seen such a thing in all their lives, and it was an open question of how much longer they'd go before they saw something truly disturbing. As of now, there were things to do. Chase sighed and got up from his bed, walking over to his desk where he kept most of his gear. Opening a small drawer, he rummaged around a few miscellaneous objects until he saw a bundle of Q-tips meant for cleaning ears. Collecting them swiftly, Chase searched a little more until he found the shining piece of metal at the bottom. It was a thin razor blade, the kind used to make X-Acto knives. Such a tool was capable of making even the most precise of cuts, not particularly designed for the devastating carnage, but sharp enough to gracefully slice through flesh and muscle. "I should get this over with," he thought aloud, and gently carried the blade in his teeth back to his bed. He activated the small machine with the switch on the side, and the screen blazed to humming life. It merely glowed, showing a distinct lack of any on-screen prompts. It would be easy to forget it was even on due to the lack of interaction the device offered. After a few seconds that Chase could only assume was the device configuration itself, it gave a small beep as 2 words flashed on the screen. "Awaiting sample." Taking a deep breath, Chase sat back and held out his left paw, dropping the blade into his right. Taking a sharp breath, he pressed the blade into the rough skin under the paw. He winced, sucking air through his teeth as he slid the blade across. All he needed was a single drop of blood. But his metacarpal pad refused to open, forcing him to hold back sounds of pain as he drove the blade in deeper, seeking to defy his own anatomy for the sake of a single blood test. "Ugh!" he breathed out, shaking slightly. His paw stung, crying a crimson red as he dropped the blade. It was hurting at an atrocious rate, but now he had what he needed. Struggling to see through his own tears, he gripped a Q-tip and glided it across the bleeding underside of his foot. The small tool instantly collected the small stream, its cotton tip turning a blood red. Unable to suppress the pain any longer, Chase dropped everything and ferociously licked away at the cut until the stinging quieted. When he was sure his paw was soothed, he turned his attention back to the blood test. He hesitated before inserting it into the machine, knowing full well that his life was just a flip of the coin now. There were 2 outcomes, and his body faintly quivered knowing that one result would be the death of him. If it ended up being him, if he was the host for Farak's malice, he would turn himself into the ACG without question. No one would ever see him again, and he would likely die once Farak's malice emerged. But he was willing to give himself to keep Adventure Bay safe. Finally shoving in the Q-tip, the machine gave a whirring noise. The following few seconds felt like agonizing hours, like someone being forced to sit in the waiting room of a hospital while their lover was being wheeled into critical care. Finally, a single word flashed on the screen, a word Chase didn't believe for a split second. Negative. He was hit with a wave of relief so brutal he almost threw up. Despite the roaring storm he was under, the screaming noise and static in his head, and the constant anxiety, there was finally something that pulled a smile over his face. He wasn't infected, at least not yet. He still had a chance to prevent total devastation. A crack of thunder sounded in the distance, and gentle rain could be heard tapping away at his ceiling. The storm was coming in fast, soon to drape the city in darkness. He was playing a massive game of chess against an opponent he couldn't even see, and now it was time for his next move. Narrowing his eyes, a rush of determination flickered within Chase. All he needed now was for the others to partake in the blood test.
He would not rest easy until all 5 of them were cleared. The sounds of thunder echoed throughout Adventure Bay, a symbol that the falling rain was not stopping anytime soon. The sky was darkened with gray clouds, doing well to match the tension that seemed to fester throughout the city. Despite the feeling of lingering dread and spiking paranoia, many continued to write off the feeling as just nerves. Being dogs, most of the Paw Patrol had a sudden urge to go out and splash in the rain, kick up mud, and toss a ball around. It was only out of respect for Rocky's fear of water that they chose to stay inside, not wanting to leave him alone. However, Zuma volunteered to venture out in the rain to gather supplies or anything else they'd need. "Does anyone else think rain is oddly relaxing?" Marshall inquired, pressing his paws up against the window. "I always sleep better under it. It's almost hypnotic." "Yeah, it's nice until your kennel floods over." Rocky looked up from his bowl of food. "And you become trapped in a box of wet death." "Water isn't deadly. We need it to live after all." The Dalmatian turned back. "So flash floods don't exist anymore?" "You know what I mean." Being contained to the lookout wasn't entirely demeaning, but one couldn't deny the pups were becoming a tad unhinged from the isolation. Marshall kept longing to be outside. Rocky flinched at each crack of thunder. Rubble kept pacing around. Sky was sneezing and wrapped up in a blanket, and Chase was oddly staring off into space. It seemed odd that the shepherd was wearing his pup pack, but not odd enough to pique the curiosity of everyone else. "Hey, Sky, how are you feeling?" Marshall walked over, seeking to end the bickering with the mixed breed with a new conversation. "Bad," she wheezed. "Like hot and cold at the same time." She pulled the blanket further over herself. The Dalmatian gave a warm smile, laying down on all fours. "Zuma should be back with some snacks soon. Maybe hot chocolate?" "Marshall, we're dogs. We can't have chocolate," Chase said from across the room. "Oh." The spotted dog blinked. "Maybe just something warm then." The overhead barrage of rain was briefly interrupted by a large slice of thunder tearing through the sky, and Rocky visibly jumped for a split second. All heads turned to the mix, and the gray dog bowed his head in shame with a crestfallen expression. Marshall gently moved to his friend's side and patted him sympathetically. No one saw Chase raise an eyebrow at the exchange, watching the two dogs as if he was studying them. "You all right?" asked the Dalmatian. The mix gave a faint shrug. "Just wishing I wasn't a coward all the time." "You're not a coward, though." "Marshall, that is not even the slightest bit true," the mix bit back with a slight attitude. "You saw how I reacted in town the other day when we came up on the roadblock. For someone who went through what you did, I'd say it's justified," Sky chimed in, momentarily looking over. Rocky waved off the comment. "And besides, you all do actual rescues. Chase is the police force, you fight fires and are trained in medical care," he pointed at Marshall. "Zuma was born to live in the one thing I'm deathly afraid of. Sky can fly, and Rubble's the construction pup." "What's so dangerous about construction?" Rubble turned with a confused expression. "I don't know," the mix confessed. "You wear a hard hat, so I assume things can fall on you." The bulldog looked to the side with a shrug. "Well, true, that's why we wear them. But if we follow regulation, it usually doesn't happen. Whatever. I'm just the dog who picks up trash." "Rocky, you're not..." Marshall tried to say.
No, forget it, the mix interrupted. One day I'll do something worthy. His frown quickly turned into a determined smile, and he puffed out his chest. One day I'll do something and get a shining medal. We don't get medals, though, Chase said again in a dry tone. The three of them continued back and forth for a few minutes while Sky tried to drown out the noise. Rubble merely shook his head at the bickering, something he had seen countless times before. He made the decision to stay out of it this time and walked to the window to blankly gaze outside. His eyes fell on a shape moving through the rain, and he jumped up excitedly. Zuma's back! Sky looked up in a weary state, and the trifecta of arguing dogs finally divided, much to the others' relief. They gathered around the main elevator as Zuma arrived, Chase noticeably keeping a few paces back. The elevator doors opened, revealing a dripping, soaking wet Labrador dragging a tied plastic bag, and Rocky went wide-eyed. Everyone, get back! Rocky called, immediately withdrawing. Relax, I already shook myself off. Zuma walked in, laughing nervously. Zuma was infamous for a certain prank he loved pulling on the rest of the team. He'd soak himself, either from getting out of water or just leaving a bath, hunt down someone else, and shake the water off with all his puppy-sized might. It was only today they were spared, although his fur was still slightly puffed up from the water. What did you bring us? Marshall gleefully wagged his tail, already nosing through the bag. Treats mostly, and some packages of dog food, the lab nodded. There was a few hints of silence in the air, then everyone suddenly picked up their heads, staring at Zuma in bewilderment. The chocolate lab sat for a few moments, trying to dry himself, then realized everyone was staring at him. What? He asked in confusion. Did you just say treats? Marshall gawked. You pronounced the R! You did it perfectly! Zuma recoiled, slightly red as he was suddenly surrounded. Yeah, I've been working on it, kinda. I'm not too good at it, though. But you're doing great! That's amazing! Rocky wagged his tail, ignoring being so close to the water-coated dog. As everyone showered Zuma in praise, Chase kept back a few feet, scanning the Labrador up and down. It was odd for Zuma to suddenly not have his impediment, and he narrowed his eyes, trying to get a read on his friend. His mind wrung out a splitting noise in his eyes, and he quickly shook his head, shaking the thought away. Of course Zuma would want to mature himself. It wasn't a red flag that something was amiss. The shepherd almost cursed himself for even thinking of such a haunting scenario, but the static in his head wasn't quieting. I take it the storm wasn't too bad? Marshall asked as he quickly sniffed out the treats. It sounds scary out there. Well, it wasn't too bad, Zuma shrugged. Most of the roads are flooded, but I could swim through with ease. Rocky rolled his eyes. You could swim through anything. That's no surprise. Was everyone else okay out there? Chase remembered to ask, tilting his head. The storm must be hitting them hard. I stopped by Mr. Porter's, the lab explained as Rocky draped a blanket over him. Most of his phone lines are dead, and his restaurant has some broken windows. We'll have to be sure to help him fix everything up, Rocky nodded. I just wish we could contact Ryder. I hope our call service fixes up soon. Chase rolled his eyes. I think we can safely assume we won't have Ryder's help in this. Marshall turned to the police dog, giving him a confused look. But there's more, Zuma continued. Mr. Porter seemed... He looked to the floor a moment, searching for the right word. Afraid? He didn't want to come outside, so I just met him at the door. I thought he was scared of the rain, but it was something else. Sky and Marshall picked their heads up, going wide-eyed and bearing their full attention. Rocky stepped back, fear flooding his face as he prepared for the worst. The mixed breed had already been through enough. He wasn't looking forward to another disaster. Rubble merely raised an eyebrow, curious about Zuma's information. Chase slowly got up and began gently circling the group, flicking his gaze around each dog. He didn't want to tell me at first. All he said was just to get home and lock myself in, he said, licking his paw. But I kept pressing him and he eventually told me. Apparently, someone died. The group shot backward in alarm. From the storm? Rocky cried. No, it's something different. Zuma shook his head, and Chase tilted his head, taking a step closer. He told me about sounds he was hearing outside when he was going around the store and locking everything down. He thought a pup was crying to be let in, so he trekked outside in the rain to try to help. Oh no, Marshall whimpered, visibly fearful. But there wasn't anything, just a trail of blood that led away. Sky withdrew into her blanket. Zuma, please stop with the horror stories. It's not a story, Zuma protested. Porter tried to follow it, but he turned back when the trail led into the forest. Zuma's final words cut into Chase, nearly making him lose his balance. The voices of the others quickly died away as Chase felt sick, having to turn his head away in case he suddenly started vomiting. Horror spewed over him as his mind flashed image after image, screaming noise after noise. It was the forest, Zuma had said, that the supposed blood trail had vanished into. Such a location was not far from Chase's secret weapon bunker, putting this possible murderer closer to the Paw Patrol than he'd like to imagine. None of the others knew of Farak's malice. None of his friends were aware of the horrible danger. For the killer to disappear in close range of the lookout, it could only mean one thing. Please no, Chase slightly pleaded, too low for anyone to hear. The more ways he tried to reason with himself, the louder his head screeched out in static. He couldn't wait any longer. He had to be sure right here and right now. If things went south, he was still carrying his concealed weapon in his pup pack. All he needed was to take control of the situation. I'll be right back, he suddenly called out, and everyone turned their heads. Wait, you're going out there? Rocky exclaimed. Into the storm? Are you crazy? Chase, you'll get sick out there, Marshall tried to reason, giving a low whine. The police dog merely pushed past them all. I just need to get something. The remaining 5 looked in confusion as the elevator doors closed, and Chase descended down into the storm outside. What's he on about? Rubble muttered, then drew back as Sky let out a sneeze. Not sure, Marshall shrugged, but he's been on edge since that mission of ours got interrupted. Rocky hung his head at the statement, a tired expression on his face. Please do not remind me of that experience. It's true though, the Dalmatian nodded, thinking over the past few days. I wonder if he's hiding something. The air turned tense as Marshall's suggestion hit the air, faint mutters among the group. It seemed unlike Chase to deceive them, yet none could deny there was a sliver of possibility. Why don't we just ask him? Sky stood up. Confront him directly. If I was being lied to, I'd want to know, Zuma nodded. Let's do it. Here he comes. Rocky pointed out the window, already looking irritated himself. It was already an explosive week. The thought of a friend going behind his back would only ruin it even more for him. All heads turned as Chase emerged from the elevator doors, soaking wet and carrying a small bag. Chase, Rocky began, although took a step back from the puddles the shepherd was causing. Can we ask you something? Not yet. the police dog denied, then set down the bag. Well, it's just... Marshall looked to the floor. You haven't really been around lately, and why are you wearing your pup pack? The shepherd merely shrugged off the question. No reason. He began nosing through the bag, revealing a small handheld device. Hey, I need you guys to do something for me. What is that? Zuma squinted at the small device. Chase picked up the device in his mouth and looked out to his friends. I promise this will be quick and easy. I just need your blood. Silence. Chase stood there awkwardly as all 5 dogs recoiled in shock, Marshall's mouth agape. The shepherd gave a small sigh, knowing this wouldn't be easy, but it was all for the greater good. All he needed was solid proof that nothing was hiding inside them, and maybe the static screaming in his head would finally clear away. A solid few seconds went by before someone spoke up. You want our what? Sky questioned, a dumbfounded look on her face. Why the hell do you want us to bleed? Rocky stepped back further. Both Marshall and Zuma barked questions of their own, but they spoke at the same time, and their words overlapped. Rubble was frozen in shock, flicking his eyes around to try and understand the situation. Chase tried to answer them one at a time, but could barely get a word out before an uproar began. What the hell is wrong with you? Rocky barked again, ears flattened. Rocky, wait. Chase tried to control the situation. You vanish for hours at a time and come back with this? Zuma bristled, his fur beginning to spike. Why would you even say that? As he was pelted with more questions, Chase was growing increasingly stressed, and hostility of his own was beginning to flare. His ears flattened down as he nearly bared his teeth. Can you just let me explain what this is? Fine, please explain, Sky snapped, and everyone held their tongues. Chase furiously searched for an easy way to put it. I need you all to take a blood test. Why? The cockapoo demanded. Because to make sure nothing is hiding inside you, the shepherd snapped, baring his teeth, then instantly drew back as he realized what he had just said. The situation had not been made any easier just then. Expressions of horror spread among his friends. Why the fuck would something be hiding inside us? Sky snarled. Are you out of your mind? Chase shook his head, trying to hold Sky's gaze. No, listen to me. I've been talking to the ACG. What? Rocky erupted. What do you mean you've been talking? Can everyone just listen to me? The shepherd had to bark over the commotion. I know why they're here. There's a creature loose in the city, and they tasked me with... Tasked? Sky echoed. You're taking orders from them now? Whose side are you on? The friendly atmosphere of the lookout was long gone. Between the 6 dogs, a furious shouting match had begun and was quickly rising. Chase was surrounded by 5 dogs who all demanded answers. You're not listening! I'm trying to help all of us by siding with savages, Marshall demanded. After what they did to Rocky? Okay, that was wrong. I can see that. Oh, that was wrong, Sky pointed out. You admit that one time was wrong, but completely siding with them isn't? Sky, there is a creature loose in Adventure Bay! Oh, that is complete and utter bullshit! Rocky snarled, jumping forward to join the argument. Did they tell you that? They showed me the photos, Chase protested. I've seen it! It's a monster that can hide inside other living things. That's why I need your blood for the test. But why would you keep this from us? Sky pleaded, deeply hurt inside. I had to, he argued. It was a confidential agreement, but that's all. There were no other secrets. No other secrets? Zuma now joined in. How about we talk about you keeping a massive room of loaded weapons in the forest? All dogs reared back in even further surprise. At this point, they could barely believe what they were hearing. Upon realizing Zuma had just broken their secret, Chase exploded in rage. Zuma! He snarled furiously. You said you'd keep that between us! You have a room of loaded weapons? Marshall exclaimed with a fearful expression. I thought it was just a normal friend between friend kind of secret. The lab barked angrily. But clearly you're keeping us from something. Don't drag me into your lies. I'm not lying! Chase yelled, flexing his claws as his fur bristled. I went there to get a weapon! I need one! Why the living hell do you need a weapon? Sky got up, now approaching Chase. The shepherd instantly backed up to the wall, as if Sky was hostile and trying to provoke him. It all made sense. Everything made sense, and it only made him angrier. Without a doubt, one of his friends was infected. Otherwise, they wouldn't be acting like this. It was so obvious that Chase was in the right. Everyone knew how much he sacrificed to keep Adventure Bay safe. It was their own fault if they infringed on his progress. The white noise that impeded through his mind finally began to take shape, quieting down the static and giving Chase faint hope in his decision. He was now fully confident that the killer was in front of him. He just had to know who. You get away from me! Chase warned, snarling his teeth. All of you, get away! Sky's hostility didn't falter, and she merely pressed forward. What? Why? Chase, I'm just asking a reasonable question! The shepherd flicked his eyes to each dog before him, trying to furiously read each one. His teeth were clenched together, his ears so flat against his head that it gave the impression he didn't have any. He surveyed each one, his pupils narrowing as an almost feral instinct took over his mind. Marshall's horrified expression, Rocky's defensive stance, Zuma's angered expression, Rubble's look of concern, and Sky, whom he knew was challenging him. The static, the noise, and the screaming in his head erupted into a symphony of agony that overpowered any other sound that could enter his ears. Rough! Ammunition! Chase barked the command, and the mechanical arm shot out of his pup pack, carrying the semi-auto pistol. Oh my god! Rocky jumped, streaming backward. Chase, why do you have that? Sky's hostility immediately shut off as she recoiled back in horror. Zuma went wide-eyed and almost froze in place. Rocky instinctively jumped in front of Marshall. Chase, have you lost it? Which one? Chase snarled, now aiming the gun around. I know it's one of you! Marshall fell to the floor and covered his face, already beginning to cry. The mixed breed above him firmly stood his ground as everyone else now tried their hardest to reassure the shepherd. Dude, calm down! Zuma pleaded, holding his paws up. Let's just take a deep breath. Why can't you suddenly speak perfectly? Chase whipped around to the lab. Why, Zuma? Why are you magically able to pronounce words suddenly? That's not you! What are you talking about? The lab drew back. I told you, I've been working on that! And you! The shepherd snapped his head towards Sky. You've been sick for at least 2 weeks! Why now? Sky held a paw up defensively, but still tried to take a step forward. I don't know, Chase! I don't know the answers to your questions! Of course you don't, he growled. No, I'm just as clueless as you are, she tried to say reassuringly. Let's just all calm down, and we can figure all these things out. I am not clueless, Chase snapped. I know what's going on, and don't try to think you know more than me! We didn't say that! Sky replied, trying to defuse the shepherd.
We haven't said anything like that! Please, put the gun down!
No! Snarled the police dog. I know it's one of you!
Chase, you're scaring Marshall!
Rocky shouted, putting a paw on the quivering Dalmatian.
Look, Chase.
Sky tried to reason, moving toward her close friend while she tried to keep her voice from shaking.
Just look at me.
The armed dog snapped his gaze to her, a wild and detached look in his constricted pupils.
You're right, she said slowly. You're right. There's something wrong here. And the best way to find it is if we take it slowly. So I'm coming over to you, and we're going to put the gun down, okay? She stared at him with a desperate look in her eyes. You can trust me.
Trust? What was trust anymore?
What was trust when any one of your friends could have something terrible hidden inside them?
He knew what Sky was doing. He knew what it was doing. It was trying to disarm him, and if it gained the upper hand, every single one of his beloved friends would die. He couldn't let that happen. Chase gave a bristling look at Sky, wordlessly writhing in his own mind.
Chase,
Sky said softly, moving forward. The shepherd instantly brought the gun forward and pulled the trigger. Ah! The deafening sound of a gunshot screamed throughout the tower, prompting a cry from Marshall as the rest fell to the floor and covered their heads. Chase shut his eyes from the noise, his ears ringing from the piercing sound. Around 2 seconds went by, and Chase slowly opened his eyes and centered his vision on the dead body that now lay in the tower. The rest of the dogs also began to slowly come to, shaking away the ringing in their ears and opening their eyes. One by one, horror reared among them as they all laid eyes on the bloodied body sitting on the floor. In that second, all of the static in Chase's head suddenly cleared, and his mind returned to a state of calm, although his heart was pounding. Looking before him, his heart sunk to the darkest depths, a sickening feeling boiling in his stomach. His ferocity and feral drive quickly vanished, and Chase stared in horror at what he had done. First, there was silence. Then it quickly erupted into screaming. "You killed her!" Rocky exclaimed, shooting backward. An uproar of mass panic tore into the room, trauma and fear staining the eyes of each innocent pup now standing before the blood that had been spilled for the first time in their lives. Each dog went wide-eyed, jumping back and screaming in terror. Everyone, with the exception of Marshall, withdrew as far as they could from the body, nearly embedding themselves into the wall behind them. Marshall stood frozen to the ground, a highly distressed look on his face as if his whole world had been shattered. He wasn't moving, lying still as if he had been paralyzed to the floor as he gazed into the eyes of the murdered cockapoo. This wasn't a dream. It was real. It had really happened right in front of their eyes. Sky was dead. Chase was still locked in his fighting stance, but any hostility he could have had was long diminished. He couldn't believe what he had done initially, but then his mind quickly turned to denial. "Wait," he muttered blankly. "No." He searched for anything he could say, not believing his own eyes. Wait. He finally came to, stuttering as he swiftly returned the gun into the pup pack. "Why would you do that?" Rocky cried from across the room, pressed up against the wall. "Sky!" Zuma howled in distress. Chase stared at Sky's body as if he couldn't even process that he had killed her. The fearful cries of his friends echoed from across the room. Rocky tried to yell for Marshall to get back, but the Dalmatian still stood frozen to the floor. Narrowing his eyes for a moment, he finally remembered why he pulled the trigger in the first place. Shaking his head, he sought to take control of the situation. "Everyone calm down!" Chase barked, taking an authoritative posture and stepping over Sky. "Everything is secure!" "What do you mean secure?" Rocky demanded. "You killed her!" "It wasn't Sky!" protested the shepherd. "It was a creature, a monster of some kind. I've been talking to Captain Cyrus. A parasitic creature is loose in the city. That's why they're here, and that's why you should have been listening to me!" The remaining dogs stared at him with a mix of fear and confusion. "Ferox Malice, that's its name," Chase informed them. "It's a single-celled, shape-shifting organism that can hide inside you and take over your body." He nodded, a wave of triumph sweeping over him. "It had Sky! That's why I had to kill her!" "How do you know that?" Zuma cried out. "How could any of us have known that?" The police dog gave a reassuring nod. "You couldn't, but everything's okay now. I'm taking control here." "Control?" whined the uncertain mixed breed. "What do you mean?" Looking back at Sky's body, Chase couldn't help but wince. It was feral instinct that made him pull the trigger on the dog, and it was highly difficult to withhold his own cries of dismay. A crack of thunder sounded from outside, and the rain slightly intensified. The storm hadn't been making anything easier, but at least now all problems had been solved. The ugly truth of the matter was simply that it had to be done. Sky was infected and had to be stopped. It was his responsibility to protect his team, and if someone had to go to meet that goal, then Sky was just means to an end. Chase looked back at his friends and nodded confidently. "It means if you all do exactly as I say, we can secure this area and I can contact the ACG. Once they've cornered Ferox Malice, they'll be out of Adventure Bay, and we can all sleep soundly again." "But," Zuma quivered, "but Sky..." "Look, I'm sad too," the shepherd shot back. "But do you realize that it's not her? If I hadn't done that, we could have all been at risk." Zuma looked to the floor, tears running down his face, although he was making an effort to process what he was hearing. Rocky was clinging to Zuma, almost like he was trying to hide within him like the Labrador was a protective shield. Marshall still hadn't moved or said a word, a traumatized look still displayed on his spotted face. Rubble was cowering in the corner, too afraid to say anything. Chase, however, was brimming with newfound confidence, overjoyed that the erratic noise in his mind was now gone along with the threat to Adventure Bay. All he had to do now was clean up the mess. "Now here's the first thing I need you all to do," he began. "Go to your kennels and stay there. Do not leave the lookout grounds." "What? Why?" Zuma questioned, narrowing his eyes. "Keeping you there is the best way to keep you all accounted for," the shepherd explained. "Also, I need everything and everyone secured while I deal with Sky and when the ACG arrives." "They're coming here?" Rocky went wide-eyed, breath growing shaky. "Yes, but you'll be in your kennels, remember?" he pointed out. "Just stay in there and don't leave. I'll have everything taken care of." He turned and walked back over to where he had left the blood reader. It was still sitting on the floor from when it had been dropped during the uproar, but it was mostly unharmed. With his friends locked down, he just needed Sky's blood to verify the parasite, and it would all be over. "Now go," he commanded. "I'll come around in a few minutes to check on you." After a moment of hesitation, Zuma nodded and slowly left the wall. Rocky still glued to him like flypaper. Rubble followed them shortly behind, keeping his head and tail low. They paused for a moment as they approached Chase, almost fearing to be near him. The shepherd stepped aside and gestured to the elevator, and after a short look at where Sky had fallen, they pressed the button to open the doors. Zuma looked back, noticing Marshall had still not yet moved. "Marshall?" Zuma called out to his friend. "Come on, do what Chase says." The Dalmatian was unresponsive, and Chase raised an eyebrow. Zuma turned around and walked over to the paralyzed dog, gently coming up to his side. "Marshall? Hey." He tapped a brown paw to the firefighter's shoulder, causing him to visibly flinch. After a moment of hesitant breathing, Marshall's blue eyes flicked towards Zuma. "Come on, we're leaving," the lab said as he moved his paw to Marshall's back, gently pushing him along. Chase watched his Dalmatian friend get led into the elevator before the door finally shut between them all and they descended down. He was finally alone. The shepherd let out a deep breath and prepared himself. Looking before Sky's body, he knew the first thing he had to do was move it. Nothing good came out of leaving a dead dog laced with a parasite in the lookout. He had to find a place to move it. Taking her out in the rain was a bad idea, as all the water would wash away the blood and likely carry the Ferox parasite into the grass. As his eyes rested above the dead animal, a low growl emitted from him. He almost took a step back, remembering Cyrus's warning about the nature of the creature. Ferox, if believed it was compromised, would erupt from the body and go on the attack. Sky had not moved since the bullet entered her head, yet Chase made sure every other dog was locked up in their kennels outside, far away from the contamination site upstairs. Even with the dangers, the puppy was naturally curious about his parasitical adversary. Gently lowering himself a little, he slightly tilted his head. "What are you?" he asked, wondering if he'd even get an answer. No response. Chase sat backward and tried again. "Can you understand me?" His words fell on deaf ears, and the shepherd gave an agitated huff and stood up. There weren't many places on the upper floors of the tower to take Sky, but he did have knowledge of a boiler room that rested underground, built underneath the tower. It wasn't a place you could access any time of day. It required special clearance that only Ryder carried. However, Chase still possessed the files and data he pulled behind Ryder's back, giving him illegal information which contained the clearance codes for the boiler room. He knew there were plenty of metal tables, tools, seclusion, and a whole furnace in there, making it the ideal place to do some blood work. "Alright, come on you," Chase muttered, leaning to grab Sky's leg in his teeth, then instantly stopped, realizing that was a terribly stupid idea as she was laced with a parasite. Quickly pulling his head back, he looked around the room and spotted the blanket Sky had wrapped herself in. Not the ideal tool for transportation, but it would do, and he made his way over to pick it up. If Ferox needed constant blood, protein, and wet environments to survive, sitting on a dry blanket was likely something it wouldn't do. So Chase felt it was safe enough to grab the fabric in his teeth. That information also meant that the creature was probably not hiding in a small puddle or drop of blood that had been spilled from the gunshot. It could survive in blood, but abandoning its protein-providing cocoon would put it in a bad position. Even if it was hiding in a blood puddle, where would it even go? There was nothing but the metal floor of the tower, no dirt or land to escape in. It was a safe assumption that Ferox was choosing not to escape Sky. Chase pulled the blanket over to the body and laid it out flat beside her. Making sure his paws were protected by an end of the fabric, he gently pushed Sky onto the blanket and wrapped her up. With the four corners laid out on the side, Chase quickly turned the blanket into a body bag. He leaned down and grabbed the corners, now dragging the dead cockapoo into the elevator, also making sure to push in the bag that contained the blood reader. It didn't take much effort to bring her in. She was a remarkably light animal after all, which also made bagging her in the blanket significantly easier. Securing the body bag in the center of the elevator and making sure nothing leaked out, Chase walked over to the control panel that consisted of two buttons. He reached his paw out and held the down button for a solid 6 seconds, and a hidden panel opened up just underneath, revealing a keypad. Alright, what was it again? Chase lowered his ears, squinting his eyes as he looked over each numbered button. 6233, He hit each one, stopping for a moment. I think 7 came after? It took him a moment, but he finally inputted the correct combination, and the elevator doors closed as it began to move downward. The shepherd sat back and took a moment to breathe, trying to ease his nerves. There was still panic in the air, but a few deep breaths would likely ease Chase into moving forward. The emergency radio Cyrus had given him still dangled from his collar, just itching to be pressed to call in the heavy artillery. In just a few hours from now, everything would be solved. The creature would be contained, the ACG would leave forever, Cyrus would commend him, a funeral would be held for Sky, and all his friends would finally understand how much he sacrificed to keep them safe. The light died from the elevator as it moved underground, shrouding Chase in darkness as he took some deep breathing exercises. It all came to a slow halt, and the doors opened, washing him in hot air. The boiler room was a small, slightly cramped area bathed in red and orange lights. Metal tables sat against the walls, carrying tools like someone had left them there years ago. An ideal place to get to work on Sky. At the end of the room was a massive metal furnace, sitting imposingly as small embers flickered through the slitted door at the front. Dozens of pipes leached out of the structure, groping along the walls and ceiling, ready to deliver gas and hot water wherever it was desired. Small blasts of steam periodically hissed from the pipes, one even catching Chase in his side as he passed, causing him to jump as the hot air hit him. Chase was not a fan of the near-scorching temperature, but he hoped the heat would agitate the creature enough to emerge more clearly through Sky's blood. "Okay, you," Chase panted, lifting Sky up onto the table and removing the blanket. "Show yourself." He walked back to the elevator where the small bag still lay across the floor, beginning to sweat under his fur from the heat. He nosed open the bag and retrieved the small blood-reading device, along with the small cotton tips he used for swabbing. It took him a few minutes to align Sky's body properly on the table, making sure to position her in a way where if Farrak's malice erupted out, he'd be able to quickly push the table and sweep her into the furnace. He swabbed the wound in her head, the killing blow that Chase had inflicted on his own will. He wasn't proud of what he had to do, but if the threat was secured, he'd be able to turn himself in for the action, owning up to what he had done. With the tip now stained a bright crimson red, he stuck it into the machine, his heart beginning to race. The screen flicked on, processing the DNA sample. "Come on!" Chase growled, staring down at the little device. "Show me!" The small machine merely beeped in response, working away at reading the blood. Chase narrowed his eyes. It didn't take nearly this long when he tested his own blood. It had its results in mere seconds. Why was it taking its time now? He was growing angry, even more from the heat, and Chase was about to lash until he spotted a small detail on the screen. It was a little symbol of a thermometer blinking rapidly on screen, and he quickly relaxed as he realized what was wrong. The excessive heat of the room was slowing down the machine, forcing it to exert more power in cooling itself than actually running its task. "I should have just done this upstairs," Chase muttered, exasperated. He was starting to feel nauseous from the heat itself, and he made the decision to return outside and check on the others. Hopefully, returning the reader to cool air would speed up the process. Night had shrouded Adventure Bay when Chase emerged outside into the rain. The storm had not yet settled, further confirmed by a crack of thunder and a flash of lightning. Chase shrugged it off and gently placed the blood reader in a spot where it wouldn't be waterlogged from the rain, leaning it against the wall of the elevator but making sure to keep its doors open. He was hoping the cold air from the rain would cool it off and give him the results he wanted. Seeing how he was already outside, he figured it would be a good idea to check in on everyone else and make sure they were abiding by his rules. Chase stretched for a moment before placing his paws on the wet pavement and trekking out into the storm. Deciding to check Rocky first, he passed under the slide that wrapped around the lookout, which was acting as a waterfall as the rain collected in it. Approaching the green kennel, Chase took a breath and knocked on the door. "Rocky?" "What?" came the muffled voice from inside. "Rocky, it's Chase. I'm just checking on you." "Chase, in all honesty, I really don't want to talk to you right now." The shepherd sighed, looking off to the side as he shook off the water that had collected in his fur. "I guess that's fair. Just seeing if you're okay, you know?" Rocky's voice came from the other side of the door. "I'm not okay, Chase. No one is." "That's fine. Just know that everything will go back to normal in a few hours," the police dog tried to reassure. "I highly doubt that." After the short conversation, Chase knew the mixed breed wasn't interested in talking. He didn't blame the dog. He wouldn't blame any of them if they were currently in distress. Witnessing their friend be executed for something they didn't understand would sow confusion and fear among the dogs, but in time they would stand strong. He moved across the lot as the rain flooded down above him, coming to Rubble's kennel and seeing that his door was actually open. The bulldog was lounging inside, trailing his paw along the wet concrete. "Is it my turn to die now?" The smaller dog gazed up his amber eyes at the shepherd. Chase hesitated for a moment, appalled at the statement. "What? No! There was a threat in the tower and I secured it." "Sure, I guess," shrugged the construction worker, then stood up. I think I'm going to sleep now." "You're tired? After all that?" "No." Rubble turned around, walking into his den. "I would just really like to get this day over with." Chase tried to end it on a happier note. "Oh, sleep well." He got no response as the kennel door was shut in his face. "Fine then," he muttered quietly. Deciding that Rubble was just dressed, he turned around and made his way to the next kennel until something caught his eye. He stopped in the rain, his vision snapping to it as his ears shot into the air, all his senses suddenly on alarm. There was a figure moving in the darkness, a shape roving its way across the grounds like a looming predator. It was standing just outside the range of the outdoor lights, concealing it in the darkness of the night. It moved slowly, seemingly pulsating as the rain fell around it, and Chase's eyes widened. He quickly snarled, barking out to the shape, "Hey, you!" The shape turned around and spotted Chase, showing initial signs of hesitation, but put its leg down and stood firm. Chase took a step back as the figure turned and began walking toward him. "Dude, what the hell?" Zuma griped, walking into the light. Chase relaxed, breathing a sigh of relief, but still held his frustration. "I told you to stay in your kennel!" "No, you said we couldn't leave the lookout grounds," the lab shot back, an edge of sass in his voice. The shepherd leaned his ears back, narrowing his eyes. "No, I'm pretty sure I said at some point to stay in your damn kennels." "Oh my God, Chase." Zuma put a wet paw to his face. "Quit being so pushy. I came out because I needed to think." "About?" the police dog pressed. "About what I'm supposed to do after watching my own friend get killed," the lab almost snarled. "You think we're just going to walk off and carry on after that?" Chase stopped and looked away, his tail drooping to the floor. Zuma had a point, but it didn't help that he was always the one who wasn't afraid to speak up. "I don't," Chase confessed. "I'm sorry you had to see that." Zuma looked at him for a long moment. "I'm not the one you should be saying that to," he inquired. "Did you see Marshall? He's pretty much destroyed. If you're trying to console anyone, it should be him." "Marshall?" Chase asked. The lab turned around. "If you haven't seen him yet, I suggest you go now." He began walking off into the rain. "Before he does something drastic." The shepherd nodded, then looked back up. "Oh, Zuma!" The brown lab whipped around with an unamused look. "Yes, I'll stay on the grounds." "Oh, no!" Chase shook his head. "I just think it's cool how you're getting better in your speech thing," he said nervously. "I think that's something you should be proud of." Zuma merely raised an eyebrow, then sharply turned to vanish into the darkness. "Worth a shot," Chase muttered, watching the Labrador go. He sat in the rain for a minute, thinking over how he possibly could have done things differently. The rain ran down his head and disguised the tears that were flooding his eyes. He appreciated having a moment for a quick cry. It was healthy to let your emotions run freely after all. He let himself cry out his stress for a moment before wiping his face and going to see Marshall. Appearing before his red kennel, Chase hesitated for a moment before knocking softly. "Marsh, you in there?" "I'm here," came the weak voice from behind the door. Even while muffled, anyone could hear him and tell the puppy was in complete anguish. "Can I come in?" the shepherd offered, already moving his nose under the handle of the door. "I guess, if you want to," Marshall meekly responded, and Chase lifted up the door. Chase made sure to shake himself off before walking in, knowing tracking water everywhere would just make the Dalmatian agitated. Walking into the kennel, the small den was warmly lit by a gently flickering flame. Marshall's kennel was unique in that it contained a small fireplace where one could actually light a fire. It wasn't big enough to overpower the kennel, having just enough room in its wall compartment to keep a humble fire burning. A small chimney atop the red home carried the small puffs of smoke emitted by the flames safely outside. Marshall's own firefighting prowess gave him the necessary knowledge on how to kindle and care for the flame without destroying his kennel. He could see that the Dalmatian had already started a tiny flame, giving the kennel a cozy and warm feel to it as he walked in. Marshall was sitting before the fire, head bowed almost as if he was praying to it, begging any higher deity up there to be rescued from the nightmare his life had fallen into. "Hey buddy, you okay?" Chase offered, trying not to make any sudden moves. Marshall was unresponsive, gently shaking over his fire. The shepherd gently laid down on his stomach, eager to console his friend without stepping over any lines. The Dalmatian was clearly under the severe effects of trauma, endlessly gazing into the burning flame, searching for meaning. "Look," Chase began. "I'm sorry." He sighed, looking away in shame. "I'm really sorry you had to see that. That wasn't pretty, and I probably could have handled that better." His voice slightly cracked as he confessed. "But I had to do it. Everyone's lives were at risk." The Dalmatian gave no reply. "You matter to me, okay?" Chase pleaded. "I just hope that you'll see why that had to happen." "Sky," Marshall cracked. "It wasn't her." The police dog took a step toward him. "I don't want to scare you more than I already have, so just know that it wasn't her." The spotted dog began sniffling, prompting Chase to move closer, slowly coming up on his back. "Whatever happens," the shepherd whispered, "I'll always be here to protect you." Marshall slowly turned his head around, revealing his tearful eyes to his friend. "Is anyone else going to die?" "No." Chase came forward confidently. "No, I'll never let that happen." He held up his arms and wrapped them around Marshall, pulling him into a hug. "I'll never let anything hurt you." They stood motionless for a few seconds until Marshall draped his own arms over Chase, nestling into his shoulder as he returned the hug, promptly crying into Chase's fur. It was agonizing to see Marshall like this, emotionally and psychologically broken from witnessing something as vicious as death. He was just a puppy, they all were, and now fear had shrouded their usual joyful lifestyle. "I will protect you, all of you," Chase repeated, cradling the Dalmatian. "You just have to trust me and do as I say." Marshall sniffled for a moment before letting go. "Okay." He gave the frail dog a warm smile. "Stay in your kennel, Marshall. I'll say when you can come out." They broke apart as Chase gave some final reassuring words. He knew Marshall was sensitive, and he'd do whatever it took to help him feel better. But first things first. The blood reader was surely ready by now, so the shepherd gave the Dalmatian a long look before finally turning and leaving the den. Passing through the rain, he briefly saw Zuma sitting nearby, facing away from the lookout. Deciding not to bother him, Chase considered having only one dog outside probably wasn't too harmful. Making his way back to the small machine, surely it was cooled down by now as it rested still in the elevator, the heat within it soothed away. Sure enough, the screen now had a blinking light, signaling the test was complete. Chase looked down at its screen, expecting all questions to be answered. Instead, a wave of confusion hit him, narrowing his eyes and blinking in bewilderment at what he saw. "Wait," he said, puzzled. "What?" The rain seemed to have a mind of its own, although Zuma never minded being outside during small storms or showers. There was something about this storm that was unsettling him. The rain had been falling for hours and hours on end. Not the rarest thing in the world, but certainly unnatural. Looking around, he couldn't fully understand what was creeping up his spine, and couldn't shake the feeling of anxiety that was stalking him from afar. But there was one thing he did understand. He knew that Sky was dead, gunned down by a certain German shepherd. All he wanted at the time were the answers to his questions, an answer to what Chase had been keeping from them, an answer to if he was slowly going insane. He remembered the shrieking gunshot that tore through the air, screams filling the room, and opening his eyes to a dead dog. He tried to keep his composure, holding on to Rocky as Chase struggled to defuse the room, but in the end, he couldn't stop himself from slowly breaking down. He and the rest of the dogs were exiled to their kennels shortly after, but Zuma was restless. He had to come outside into the storm and think, to address the aching void that rose in his heart. Sky was gone, a core piece of the family that was never coming back. Her kennel stood like an empty tomb, her food bowl sitting outside in loneliness, collecting rainwater absently. Now Zuma was sitting alone in the lookout clearing, his fur soaking over from the rain. Staring ahead into the pitch blackness of the forest before him, he contemplated running. If what Chase said was true, then there was no need to flee. All threats were taken care of. However, he couldn't shake the feeling that the shepherd was lying once again. A few minutes ago, he had a brief conversation with Chase. It was glaringly obvious when the shepherd met him outside that the power was going to his head. So what if Zuma stayed away from his kennel? He wasn't leaving, so he'd be out here if he wanted to. The lab had made a passing comment about Marshall, hoping to shoo Chase away, which fortunately it did, leaving him to his solitude once again.
This is stupid,
the lab muttered to himself, staring down at his paws.
Why now? Why us?
He pleaded into the dirt as if he spoke over a soul who had been buried underneath him. A sickening feeling rose within him as he realized soon it would be Sky sleeping under the ground. Zuma made a mental note to himself, already writing his speech for the funeral. Sky was an amazing pilot, a fearless leader, and an amazing friend. Tears ran down his face as he silently rehearsed his words to himself, mixing with the rainwater. A rustling sound behind him caused the lab to look up from his grieving. Glancing behind him, he spotted Chase leaving Marshall's kennel, walking out into the rain. Zuma instantly whipped his head away to prevent locking eyes with him, refusing to even meet the gaze of the shepherd who put down one of his best friends. As he heard the shepherd's paw steps fade away back to the lookout's entrance, he sighed and turned back to watch him. He didn't want Chase going anywhere near Marshall anymore. Not on his life. The apology that had likely taken place between them was an exception, but Zuma made future plans to keep Chase apart from the broken Dalmatian. He watched Chase approach the elevator doors, coming to a small device that he noticed was leaning against the doors. Tilting his head slightly, Zuma gently turned himself for a better look. He remembered seeing the odd machine when Chase brought it in, asking for a blood test. The police dog mentioned that he was running Sky's blood, likely through that exact device. Zuma suddenly felt a wave of shame run over him, gently lowering his head. Had he been wrong? Had Chase truly been trying to protect them? He watched the shepherd look down into the device, then as confusion spread across his face. "Wait," he heard Chase say. "What?" Zuma got up and approached him, slowly and carefully. Chase's face held an expression of confusion, which quickly shifted into bewilderment, then sank into horror. "Chase, are you all right?" Zuma said, calling to him, and the shepherd snapped his attention over, taking the Labrador off guard. "Yeah, fine," the shepherd barked nervously, visible worry flooding his face. "You don't look fine." The lab tilted his head. "What does the machine say?" "What machine?" Zuma narrowed his eyes. "The one you put Sky's blood in?" "Oh yeah, that one!" Chase laughed nervously, looking off to the side.
Hey, I gotta get upstairs. But what did it say? Said the lab, pressing his word. She's infected, right? Chase hesitated, looking up for a solid second. Yes, that's why I need to go upstairs. Why are you acting like that? The shepherd whipped around, almost in a panic, grabbing the blood reader in his mouth. Before Zuma could say anything, the police dog nearly threw himself in the elevator and hit the button to shut the doors. The lab was blindsided by Chase's explosive escape, only able to flash a puzzled expression. What the hell is going on? Zuma watched him go before turning around to walk home. Sighing to himself, he decided there was no point in asking questions anymore. He walked up to Rocky's sealed kennel and knocked on the metal sheet door, droplets of water flying off with each knock. Chase, I said go away, came the voice from inside. Rocky, it's me, Zuma gently sounded from behind the door. Oh, sorry. The door opened, revealing a shaken gray mix. Come on in, I have some towels. The lab apologetically entered the den, careful not to track too much water anywhere. Yeah, sorry, it's just the rain hasn't stopped yet, he said with a smile, happy to talk to a dog he trusted. Rocky pulled over a blue towel and draped it over his soaked friend. Zuma watched him, noticing Rocky's sullen expression. How are you feeling? Awful, Rocky confessed, climbing back into his bed. I'm just trying to get through the night. I just can't believe she's gone. He looked up at Zuma with pained eyes. How can he just do that? His voice began to break. How can he just... I think... Zuma tried to say, reaching his paw forward to comfortingly place it on Rocky's. I think there's a lot of things we don't understand right now. He said Sky was a monster, the mix said, his voice shaking. Looking away, Zuma stared ahead at the walls. The comfort of the towel was already warming him and drying away the water in his fur. They stayed quiet for a few long minutes, each one trying to form their own explanation of recent events. Thinking over his friend's distressed words, Zuma's mind came to a clear yet disturbing conclusion. I think we should be careful around Chase for a while, Zuma said slowly. He doesn't seem like himself. What do you mean? Rocky asked, shuffling farther into his bed. The lab shook his head. I can't really explain it. You know those moments when you've known someone your whole life, then they suddenly change? A sinking feeling rose in his heart the more he spoke. Rocky, I don't think Chase is there. Not there? The mix went wide-eyed. I don't trust him, Zuma concluded. Do you? Rocky flattened his ears. Hell no! Did you hear what he said about conspiring with the ACG? Those same dogs who beat me up? The lab gave a low growl. I'm honestly sick of hearing about those stupid military dogs. How do you think I feel? The mix stood up, his fur bristling. Just for once, I think everything's okay. Then out of nowhere, it comes out that Chase is hoarding guns and talking with their captain. Well, I'm glad that someone feels the same way as me. Zuma smiled to himself. I'm gonna go talk to the others, see how they're doing. I guess I'm the only one who actually dared to step out of my kennel. Are you suggesting that I'm scared of Chase? Rocky raised an eyebrow. I mean, are you? The mix suddenly stopped, retracting a little as his eyes went to the ground. A little. Zuma sighed, feeling sympathetic. It's okay. Just stay behind me if you feel you need to.
The fearful Mix nodded in reply, but failed to hide the smile that was slowly brightening his face. Tragedy had torn through them all like a white-hot knife, and Zuma took it on himself to keep everyone together, no matter what Chase tried to do. With a final reassuring nod to Rocky, he shed his towel and left the kennel, making sure to close the door behind him so no rain would flood in. It was slightly uncomfortable to be wet all over again, but he pushed away the thought as he approached Rubble's kennel. "Rubble?" Zuma knocked on the door. "Are you alright in there?" No response, although faint rustling sounds could be heard from inside. He definitely wasn't asleep, and Zuma could clearly hear what seemed to be drunken stumbling, running into things and objects falling to the floor. "Rubble?" the lab asked again, motioning to open the door. "No," Chase said to himself, staring down into the blood reader as rain hit his head. That can't be right." He blinked his eyes several times, trying to make sense of the words before him. Was the machine still overheated? Broken even? Negative. Sky's blood tested negative for the parasite. Staring down at the machine in bewilderment, panic surged within his head, accompanied by a large burst of static that crept over his brain, deafening out the sounds of the rain. For a brief moment, Chase was lost in his own purgatory, hearing and seeing nothing but what was before him. His breath quivered, paws trembling as he held Sky's results. "Chase?" came a voice to his right, and the dog snapped his attention over. It was just Zuma. Usually Chase would feel relief, but he was panicking. He had to get away, get upstairs, anywhere, flee from the madness for just a moment to comprehend it. "Are you alright?" Zuma asked wearily. The opposite, to be exact. Chase's head was screaming in white noise, and for a moment he didn't even recognize the Labrador. "Yes, fine!" "You don't look fine. What does the machine say?" Why was Zuma always so nosy? Why was Zuma anything that he was? The thought gave rise to a feeling of anger, a hostility that bristled within the shepherd. It was always Zuma, always that stupid lab who broke the rules. Caught up in the sounds in his head, Chase could barely even register his friend's questions. "What machine?" he breathed out, confused. "The one you put Sky's blood in?" "Oh yeah, that one!" Chase tried to laugh off his mistake. "Hey, I gotta get upstairs!" His mind was barking at him. Run. Flee. Run. Run faster. Run anywhere just to get away from the others. Run somewhere you can break down sobbing at your own failures. But what did it say? Zuma took a step forward. "She's infected, right?" Chase felt his body lock up. He could lie right now and be done with it. But how much time would that buy him? "Yes, that's why I need to go upstairs." "Why are you acting like that?" With no further excuses to give, Chase turned sharply and fled the scene, grabbing the blood reader and running into the elevator. Shutting the doors as fast as he possibly could, he caught a brief glimpse of Zuma's confused expression. There was no time for that now. He had to get back to the boiler room and rip out an answer wherever he possibly could. He paced in circles as the elevator closed and began descending, whimpering to himself as he returned underground. It couldn't be true. It just couldn't. Chase made every single attempt to deny it, but the truth was looming over him, just waiting for him to look up.
He was almost running in place when the electric door slid open, and a wave of heat washed over him. He could care less about the temperature now. Savagery gripped his mind as he bared his teeth, claws unsheathing from his paws. He took no time sprinting back to Sky's body, still lying motionless on the table. He jumped up on it in a single motion, planting his paws on the table firmly and staring down into the cockapoo's dull, lifeless eyes. "Show yourself!" he barked, insanity in his eyes. "Show yourself, damn it! I know you're in there!" Not a word was spoken in response. Was he expecting it to? "Ferox Malice! That's your name, right?" He was nearly screaming now. "Come out of here and face me!" He slammed his paw on the table, knocking off small metal tools as the impact sound rang throughout the room. "I said come out!" He wanted so badly to deny it, like if he truly believed hard enough he could change reality, willing himself into the right and erasing what could have possibly been the worst mistake of his life. "Come out!" His voice lowered, breaking as tears spilled from his eyes. "Please!" Sky wasn't infected. She never had been. Her blood was inserted into the machine, and it came back negative. He tried desperately to form an explanation in his head, like Ferox Malice switching bodies or leaving Sky, but it never left with the original body unscathed. If it decided to leave Sky, she would have been slaughtered in the process. The only thing that made sense now was Chase's worst nightmare. He murdered her. He was wrong, guessed incorrectly on the most pivotal decision of his entire life. Now an innocent dog was dead, murdered by his own paw. And for what? What could she have possibly sacrificed herself for? Was there even a threat to begin with? Static churned in his head as a crippling question surrounded him. Was the parasite even here to begin with? Was Sky really just sick with a common cold? Anguished at his failure, Chase slowly let himself down from the table. Each step of his paw was shaking, his very soul struggling to live with the reality of having killed one of his closest friends. Every moment he tried to make sense of the situation, his mind only blocked it out. All he could do now was deflate, lowering himself to the floor and tucking in his paws. Silence filled the air for a long moment, and Chase closed his eyes and wept on the floor, mourning the beloved friend he put down. Upon opening his eyes again, he sat up and looked to the floor. Remembering the pup pack that still sat on his back, Chase realized the source of their problems in the first place. "Rough ammunition," he barked sadly. On perfect command, the mechanical arm extended out of the pack, brandishing the same firearm he had used earlier today. Chase reached up and removed the gun from the arm, now holding it in his own paws. His weeping eyes inspected the weapon, turning it over a few times. Sky was dead, and it was all his fault. A crime executed from the very tool in his paws. Was it always true in his case? He was a police officer after all, and such authorities were no strangers to violence. What was it that made him pull the trigger on her? Delusion? Or had the violent nature of police officers suddenly gone to his head? He stuttered, making a decision. "I'm turning myself in." He sighed and tossed the gun away, not even caring to see where he threw it. He heard the metal sound of impact as the weapon collided with the floor, most likely behind some junk now. He didn't deserve to carry a gun. He didn't deserve his badge, his uniform, his title. He wouldn't complain if it was all stripped away from him.
Moving his paw up to his neck, he felt a tag that still hung from his collar, the one Cyrus had given him. The tag with the emergency radio implanted inside.
I failed,
he said in resignation, realizing there was no hope for him now. He unclipped the radio and tossed it away along with the gun. No point in helping the ACG. No point in even speaking to them anymore. What would Cyrus say at the revelation that Chase truly was just a puppy who didn't understand what he was doing? There was only one thing Chase could do now. Wait out the storm and for Ryder to return. But what would he tell his friends? They had to know eventually. They had the right to know the truth. Although he didn't really have that conversation planned, especially after he already lied to Zuma. Sighing, he turned and left the boiler room, shutting the doors behind him as he entered the elevator. It felt like a dream as he moved back to the surface, with the shepherd blankly gazing into the wall as he watched his life fall apart. The static in his head continued on as it screeched in his ears, but Chase made no effort to calm it. Now he understood it, at least in his own way. The noise was here for a reason, a figment of punishment for himself. He had nothing but his own mistakes to face now. The doors opened, revealing the dark downpour outside. Chase quickly made plans to retire to his kennel and sleep away the entire horrid night. "Help!" cried a voice. He quickly picked his head up, ears stiffened in alarm. "Chase!" Zuma cried out, straining to keep the kennel door closed. "Over here!" It took him a second to process the situation, but Chase quickly sprang up into action. "Zuma!" A violent clang erupted from Rubble's kennel, sounding like something within it was bouncing off the walls, causing the entire structure to sway. "Get back!" the lab shouted out as the other dogs emerged from their kennels. "What is that?" Rocky exclaimed, eyes widening at the sight. Low growls began to emit from the kennel, layered on one another like dozens of dogs were all snarling at once. "Holy shit!" Chase muttered to himself, eyes widening as he began to step back. A brutal sound of impact sounded from the den, the walls visibly beginning to bend outward. With each forceful blow, the kennel lost more of its stability as the creature within it fought to break free.